Great, thank you. And good morning to everyone. Before we begin the public hearing, I'd like to make the following announcement. Due to the continuing threat to the public health from COVID-19, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft's Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Enquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. McDermott, will you please call the roll to take attendance, and members that are in attendance, just indicate that you're present. Mr. McDermott?
Councilmember Bass? Councilmember Brooks?
Aye. Hello, I'm present. I'm sorry.
Same thing.
Councilmember Driscoll?
Good morning, present.
Morning.
Councilmember Gautier?
Good morning, Council President, colleagues, and everybody watching. Present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson?
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Harity? Councilmember Johnson?
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Councilmember Jones?
Good morning, President, colleagues. Philadelphia, I am present.
Councilmember Lozada?
Good morning, everyone. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilmember O'Neill?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Councilmember Phillips?
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Philadelphia.
Morning.
Councilmember Squilla?
Good morning, Council President and colleagues. Present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Thomas?
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Philadelphia, and good morning to the administration.
Good morning.
And Councilmember Vaughn?
Okay. Very good. We have established our quorum. This hearing is now called to order. This is the continued public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 230-144, 230-145, 230-146, 230-147, 230-148, 230-149, and resolution number 230-162. Mr. McDermott, please read the titles of the bills and resolutions that we have before us today.
Bill number 230-144, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2024 to 2029 inclusive. Bill number 230-145, an ordinance to adopt the fiscal 2024 capital budget. Bill number 230-146, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2024. Bill number 230-147, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Tax by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 230, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority on Wages and Net Profits to provide for the continuation of the tax and to make other conforming changes, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 230-149, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Taxes by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. And resolution number 230-162, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2024 through 2028 and incorporating revised changes with respects to fiscal year 2023, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this council and approved by the mayor on January 3rd, 1992 by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. Today, we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2024, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2024 through fiscal 2029. This morning, we will hear testimony from the Department of Public Property, Streets, Light, and License and Inspections. This afternoon, Department of Prisons and Fleet Management. Mr. McDermott, the first person to testify from the administration is?
Council President, I am present too. I think I wasn't here for the roll call.
Let the record reflect that Councilman Harity is present. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, sir.
Sharon Vaughn.
Oh, Let the record reflect that Councilwoman Vaughn is present.
Okay, and the first person from the administration to testify is Bridget Collins Greenwald, Commissioner of Department of Public Property.
Mr. President, my apologies. This is Councilwoman Bass. I am present.
And let the record also reflect Councilwoman Bass is present.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, CP. How are you?
I have no complaints whatsoever.
Excellent. I will get started then. Good morning, Council President Clark and members of City Council. I'm Bridget Collins Greenwald, Commissioner of the Department of Public Property. It is a pleasure to appear before City Council today in support of Public Property's Fiscal Year 24 budget request. As you have our written testimony, which highlights the many accomplishments and plans of the department, I would only like to add one thing that is not in the written testimony about our team. It is nothing the veterans of this body have not heard me say before. The Department of Public Property has many outstanding employees that tend to fly under the radar, and I would like to acknowledge them publicly for their commitment to their public service. I've said it before, I will continue to say, I'm very proud to work in a place where employees show such genuine sense of care and commitment to their profession with the absolute mindset of getting things done. We follow our core mission of responsibly serving the city's workforce and communities by providing quality facilities and workplaces of which we are proud. DPP staff are the unsung heroes of the city in my mind. I also briefly wanted to thank you personally, Council President. You took over the reins of Council President right around the time I got to public property. And in that time, we've worked on a lot together and have accomplished a lot of good things. And I always have appreciated the respect and professionalism you've shown to me in my department. And I will sincerely miss working with you. It's been a real pleasure on my part. And I wish you nothing but success in your next journey. I can't imagine you're retiring officially. You know, I'm sure you'll be on to other things, but I wish you a lot of success. And it's been a pleasure, my pleasure, and our departments as well. So thank you.
Commissioner, you're making me tear up. Stop.
Well, I mean, we've been through a lot. I mean, I'm not going to name it all here, but we have.
All right,
And good, a lot of good. So I wanted to go on the record and acknowledge that because, you know, the end of an era in my mind and, you know, we'll go on. So that's the end of my testimony and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you and the department. Done a pretty awesome job, and I really appreciate your willingness to work with us, particularly around office space. We've been in a position to expand our resources dramatically, and it gives us a much better position to service the citizens of the city of Philadelphia, and I appreciate it. Let me ask you a question about something that comes up in the private sector significantly, the use of office space. You know, we talk about office space downtown and the I guess the occupancy rate is moving up slightly. How have we found it on the city's inventory? And this whole question about whether or not people actually ultimately come back to work. You know, when you hear on the private side, once people went remote, and then they determined that, you know what, maybe some of the workforce should continue to work remote because there's no longer the need to be in buildings. You have a perspective on that? And can you give us a snapshot of where we are with our buildings?
Sure, I do. We are inching up, as you said. We were at a low, obviously it was below 10% beginning of COVID, it seemed, in our buildings. Now, you know, we topped off at about 35% when people started coming back. Now we're seeing around 50%. So hybrid is still here. I anticipate, just my perspective is that it will stay. I don't know what that will look like, you know, whether it's people come in 1 day a week, they come in 4 days a week, you know what I mean? That's still being worked out by each individual department. But I can say we on the city, we're working, there's a group of us, we have a little committee that's formed that's working on, okay, what does this look like for our space? How do we make certain spaces dedicated where people can just come in, you know, maybe reserve some space if you just need some touchdown space for the day and whatnot. So we've been working really hard on that, trying to modernize our space. But I agree with you, it's inching up, but it's inching up a little bit slower than I anticipated it would.
All right. So with respect to space needs, I know a lot of decisions are in terms of leasing external space outside of the building we own are made a year or two or three in advance. Have we looked at the possibility of revising our space needs as a result of what we're seeing with the hybrid or potentially virtual nature of our workforce? Will we look at out years as potentially revising those contractual needs and possibly saving money like other people do?
Yeah, yes, we actually are looking at that. So if you recall, during the height of the pandemic, we renegotiated some of our leases to get some early savings. So those leases, when they all come up, then we're going to look at absolutely how will we consolidate? Where are we going to be in the workforce then, right? We also have some existing leases that are about to come to their end, and we're working really hard with our architects and engineers and our client departments to say, okay, what do we actually need? Do we need this space? Do we need as much space? The one where we used to do before, like, okay, if you have 5,000 square feet, you got 5,000 square feet. It's pretty much, even now. That's not the way now. So we've been working really hard with our client departments to see what we actually need for the leases that are upcoming. Okay. Yep, it's totally on the radar.
A few years ago, this was an issue with respect to, I hate to hit you with this one, the triplex, the quadplex, or whatever it's called. And there were some concerns about the expiration of a particular contract. Minority-owned company had likely, I think, probably the largest contract for services in the city of Philadelphia, maybe in its history. And there was a lot of controversy over the changing of the guard, so to speak, in terms of who was going to ultimately. But at the end of the conversation, there was a commitment that the levels of participation on the MBE, WBE would remain the same or be more significant. Where are we at? Are we still, and I understand that, the time has moved, things have changed somewhat, but are we still maintaining that level of participation? I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was a lot of subcontracts let to accommodate the companies that had, was a part of the earlier team that was minority owned.
Yep. So yes. So we're currently at a 64% OEO participation rate. So it was comparable. I should let you know that RFP just went out this year. So we are in the process of reviewing proposals and awarding that contract this year. So it should be re-awarded. It will be awarded July 1.
Oh, we're in the process of looking at solicitation?
Yes.
For the triplex.
For the triplex.
Is it the quad or the tri?
It's the triplex. We call it the quad when we include City Hall.
Okay.
But City Hall's maintained by, our team, the DPP team. So the triplex is the one that's contracted out.
So that solicitation
that's the
is out
MSP.
there?
Yep.
The RFP, okay. All
Yep.
right, that's good. That's good to know. I didn't know that. Okay. All right, Commissioner, thank you. I'll come back a little later. I got some specific questions to ask you. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Commissioner, for your longstanding commitment to the city of Philadelphia. And I think the world of you and your staff. So
thank you.
It's a good feeling to be, I was probably the shortest tenured chair of the Public Property Committee ever. President moved along once we got new members, but I enjoyed my brief tenure.
Yeah, our 10 minutes together were lovely.
Cup of coffee. So and thank you for being forward thinking on the use of office space. I know we're looking at hybrid kind of usage, and in particularly the MSB building comes to mind. But I don't want to talk about that. I'll let that go to the second round. I'd like to know, since the pandemic, we've picked up on public appearances again, stages, sound and lighting. Can you give me and my members a sense of where we are with that, what we can look forward to going forward in the summertime. So when you think about our festivals, whether it's in West Philly, South Philly, North Philly, Germantown, we rely on you and your staff for the stages, the sound equipment. How are you positioned going forward to make sure that you continue to make us look good?
Well, really well, actually. So last year in our budget, it was voted on that we would get a special events team, which we never had before. So before, if you remember in the past, we would use DPP employees, but we would be pulling them off of other jobs and doing the special events. So now we have a dedicated team. So we're hiring them up. So we have the authorization to hire 20. I think we're at about 12 right now, which is good. So they've been doing, so you probably saw them stringing up barricades for some of the parades that we've had lately. They've all been trained in how to put the stages together. They're all working under the supervision of Ray Conwell and James West, who a lot of you know personally, who have been around for a while. So they have the teams trained up, and we're just, once we get the special events request from the MDO, we'll be out there setting up the stages and the barricades and whatever else it is we need. So we think we're in good shape.
Well, we're glad that the city of Philadelphia is back open to events in neighborhoods. So for some people who can't get to Center City to a concert, this is their concert. This is their community festival. So we appreciate that. What I'd like to also ask you about is how do we fare on public spaces when it comes to, like, we own the SEPTA platforms. How are you working with SEPTA and others as we start to look at some of the spillover from the streets to the subways platforms and to the elevated platforms that we kind of technically own and lease to them? Is there any coordination to your knowledge about that?
No, I can't say that there is. When we did that lease back in the last administration, even though the city owns a lot of those stations and platforms and whatnot, we turned over full responsibility of everything to SEPTA. So we don't really have any involvement in anything that goes on in the platforms or anything like that anymore.
Okay. Well, we need to kind of take a look at that, if nothing more than making sure that those platforms have adequate lighting, that they get the proper ongoing maintenance, because those things are factors, as you can see, on 52nd Street, on the subways, that we have a standard offered by the city of Philadelphia that SEPTA must maintain. And so we'll take a look at that as we start to get down the budget train to SEPTA. But we may want to kind of revisit what the lease agreements call for. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gaudier.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning, Commissioner Greenwald.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First, I want to commend you and your team for all of the hard work that you do. Because of your help, the 3rd District has, I think, its first ever district office at 606 South 52nd Street. And we're just incredibly excited to be in the community. And we're really thankful for your help on that, especially Patrick Livingston. So wanted to be sure to say that. I do have some concerns that I wanted to talk through. I wanted to talk about public properties, surplus vacant land. And I wanted to ask you, how much would it cost to, for the city to properly maintain these sites and to invest in safety improvements such as lighting and cameras, and in some cases, jersey barriers. And I'm not asking this to be disparaging. You have a very difficult job, but it's also clear to me that the department doesn't have the capital and maintenance budget it needs to secure all of these properties. And, you know, I've been in situations where it's the city's vacant land that is the eyesore, right? The city's vacant land that is attracting illegal dumping, abandoned autos, and sometimes crime. And so the neighborhood, for instance, of West Mill Creek comes to mind, where we kept a lot of we were not able to build on a lot of the land because of the creek that, you know, used to sit beneath the neighborhood. But, you know, we actually own quite a large amount of recreational assets in the neighborhood, and many of them are places that are attracting a lot of negative activity and leading to you know, helping to add to some of the uses and activities in the neighborhood that residents want to get rid of. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think public property needs to remediate these spaces and to more intensely care for the vacant land? And in my view, I see this as a crime prevention strategy. And so I think it's really important that the city is able to, you know, to do more on this.
So I'd have to get back to you with a number, just based on the fact that, you know, there's a mixed bag of who owns some of the public land, right? Some is DPP, some is land bank, some is PHA, some is PRA, some is HDD. So you know what I mean? It runs the gamut. I would have to get back to you on an answer for that. Like what we think it would take with everything that you had listed and what we think is a good strategy to making some of the vacant land safe. We used to have one years ago, but that's very outdated at this point. So let me get back to you on that, and I'll send the information to the council president, and we can get a number together for you.
Thank you. I would appreciate having that information from you and, you know, our other land management partners as well. I know that this, you know, what you described is true, where we have many city agencies that are responsible or that own pieces of vacant lands, but how that's playing out in the neighborhoods is not great for quality of life. And so I just want to encourage us, one, to come together in how we're thinking about the stewardship of that land. And also because we know that if we clean and green you know, vacant spaces, if we secure them properly, we can reduce crime. And, you know, just the city can't be the one that's actually driving negative activities within neighborhoods. We have to be the solution. And so I would appreciate having that information for council. And again, I thank you very much for your work every day, maintaining quite a large amount of public properties and for the assistance that you give our office on a daily basis. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. How you doing, Bridget? How are you this morning?
I'm good, Councilman. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain. I just wanted to follow up on some of the questioning that Councilman Curtis Jones talked about regarding how do we expand the support for stages for our festivals during the summer. And I know it may seem like a minute issue to some people, but at the end of the day, pre-COVID, we pretty much depended on public property to provide these stages for the various events that we were hosting, not only for us, but also our constituents who are trying to do things to keep the quality of life inside our neighborhoods very active and vibrant. And so can you just give me an idea of what staffing looked like pre-COVID, what it's looked like now post-COVID, and then will we get back to the time where rather we're requesting to host events or community groups are requesting to host events? I know we use the Showmobile now, but you know, the Showmobile doesn't fit every event that we're hosting compared to your crew coming out and setting up. And then when we're being told we have to call a private independent contractor, a lot of us don't have those type of resources to actually do that. And so can you just give me an update on what that's going to look like in the future?
Sure. So pre-COVID, as you know, we had a bunch of events, right? And we were running, especially in the summer, right? We were always running from one side of the city to the next. We had, I said earlier, I want to correct what I said earlier. We had a staff of about 3 that were completely dedicated to special events. That was it. And what we did was we used the rest of our trades workers would supplement. So we would pull some plumbers, carpenters, electric, whatever it was. And that's how we would get all the events done. During COVID, there were no events, as you know, and our department took a hit with some layoffs, and that group, unfortunately, was one of the groups that was on the layoff list. So post-COVID now, we got the funding to hire this staff of 20, which is way more than we ever had before. So that's a dedicated staff. So I think, my opinion is, we're going to be able to be rocking and rolling way better than we were before, because now it's dedicated. We don't have to say, okay, let me pull a plumber off of this job he's doing and have him, make it a stage. So I think we're going to be in good shape. So we're going to follow the same process, through the MDO special events, through Jazz's group, and, putting in the applications and whatnot. And then, that group will disseminate the information to us, and we'll be out there laying barricade, doing stages, whatever it is. Probably all summer long. Yeah, so we're in good shape, I think.
So we can look forward this summer to be pretty okay when it comes to hosting the events, and when neighborhood groups go through the particular process, that they should feel comfortable that we'll be back at the old days where I see Council President over there, I see an actual stage will be set up. Because I know we do a lot of great events like Made in America and a variety of different other events, but some people say, oh, these politicians, they're doing these community, celebrations and so forth. But what I try to explain to people, it means so much. From Strawberry Mansion to Point Breeze, from Packer Park to East Sweet, when we have these type of events during the summer, because everybody don't have the luxury of going down to the shore. Everybody don't have the luxury of going to the Wells Fargo Center to a show. And so when we bring the entertainment to the actual neighborhood, it's just a big celebration. And also, most important, it brings people together, all in the effort of them enjoying themselves. And so we just want to thank you for your hard work and your dedication on this particular issue in general, with all your other responsibilities. And just thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman, you are so right. Given the cost of tickets nowadays, if it weren't for some of these community events, people would never see live entertainment, because I cannot believe how much they are charging. That's why Ticketmaster is in court as we speak, right? Because what they've done as it relates to these ticket prices. Mr. One quick question. I see in your testimony, you talked about the 20 staff positions. Now, I'm understanding that's for the special events, i.e. the stages and things of that nature.
Yep. Yes, totally dedicated.
Okay. In terms of your hiring capacity, because I know we're having challenges in all our departments, is it likely that we're going to be in a position to hire these folks, or do we have a strategy for getting those 20 people?
Yeah, so we're more than halfway there, right? So we're at about 12 now. So we're using the civil service list for semi-skilled labor. So that's the list that's out there. It has a decent amount of people on the list. So you can, kind of canvass the list and schedule a bunch of interviews at one time. So that's what we've been doing. So I think we're in decent shape. I think it's going to be in flux for a little bit, in the beginning, but having 12 is, like I said, it's a lot better than we had before. So I think we're going to be okay. And I know I called out Ray and James again, because they've been doing this forever. And I know you all know them if you see them out there. They have the team, trained up and ready to go. So I think we're going to be in good shape. I really do.
Okay. And the conversation with the school district, with graduates, we having that also? I mean, because
yes. Yeah. That's to get our students in the students from the school district into our trades positions. So the strategy this year, which I think is going to be a great one, is we have two of our younger gentlemen that work for us in the city came in through the school district through that apprenticeship program, and they've agreed to be like the spokespeople. So they've been going to the schools, and they're going to be kind of like the mentors. So it's good, young, you know what I mean? Young, just came from the school district, young in their career, but to show, hey, I came from here and now I'm here. Like, you know what I mean? They're in trades, HVAC trades. So it's great. It's great. And obviously it helps the city and it helps them. It establishes a career. So it's awesome.
Good, good. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Commissioner. I do not see any other members queued up for questions. So with that, Commissioner, I want to thank you very much for your testimony. As always, please be prepared for any potential callbacks as we go through this budget process. And I know you're always available at any point in time for us. So I want to thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. And thank you for
Absolutely.
your testimony.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next up, we have our good friends from, we have license inspection on the street, Bob. What we have next?
Next person to testify is Carlton Williams, Streets Commissioner.
Streets Commissioner, good friend. Commissioner, you good?
I'm good. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How's your teams doing this year?
Oh, we're struggling a little bit.
Yeah,
but the best news is that we out there. So
that's all that counts, right? You have young people engaged in positive activity.
Absolutely, absolutely. Win or lose, we winning on the field. We keeping them off the streets. So that's our goal.
I'm loving it.
Yeah,
So thank you.
yeah. I'm ready when you are, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're ready for you, sir.
All right. Good morning, President Clark and members of City Council. I am Carlton Williams, Streets Commissioner. Joining me today are Keith Warren, Deputy Commissioner for Sanitation, Richard Montanez, Deputy Commissioner for Transportation, and Christopher Newman, Deputy Commissioner for Administration. I am pleased to provide testimony on Streets Fiscal Year 2024 operating budget. The FY2024 total budget request for the Streets Department is $354 million. As reflected in the mayor's budget recommendation submission for our department. This includes $154 million in general fund monies and $74 million in newly created transportation fund, with the balance of our operating budget funded through state fuel tax allocations and grants. The establishments of our new transportation fund is significant as it provides dedicated sources of funding for the Transportation Division services and operations, while at the same time providing certain financial advantages and opportunities for the city overall. Comparing the combined FY24 general and transportation fund to this year's fiscal estimated general fund operating obligations, Streets' recommended budget includes $10.9 million more in the city funding for FY24. The significant increase is primarily due to the infusion of funds for both new and expanded programs and fully fund multiple positions added and authorized in last year's budget. Specifically, this includes continued expansion of the department's mechanical street cleaning program, the establishment of a new public safety traffic safety enforcement program, and full funding for the positions authorized in FY23 for infrastructure improvement staff required to manage a massive investment in new federally supported transportation public works projects via the bipartisan infrastructure law. As council is aware, Streets continues to pursue highly ambitious goals regarding litter reduction and waste diversion, effective and efficient roadway maintenance, and the continued actualization of multimodal traffic calming and safety. Our objective metrics-based approach using tools such as the Litter Index, Roadway Quality Index, High Injury Corridor data, and various other operational data ensures we focus these efforts to those areas most in need, often in predominantly minority and disadvantaged communities, where older, smaller, and more condensed housing and geographic streets layouts can exacerbate litter conditions and transportation infrastructure quality, as well as high crime areas where certain improvements, such as better street lighting, may deter. This department is continually improving our objective planning measures as we ensure racial equity in addressing services for city residents. We are very proud of the remarkable strides we've made this fiscal year towards our goals and we are poised and excited to embark on strategic plans moving forward into FY24. Our sanitation division, under the direction of Deputy Commissioner Keith Warren, continues to address litter conditions throughout the city by significantly increasing illegal dumping enforcement and cleaning efforts, while at the same time maintaining a highly effective and efficient trash and recycling collections operation with all trash and recycling picked up consistently on a daily basis throughout the city, and the best on-time trash collection rates in over 9 years. We have also, throughout the city, we have also very successfully continued to significantly expand mechanical street cleaning from 6 to 14 neighborhoods this fiscal year and plan to expand on 20 neighborhoods next fiscal year. In addition, after being one of the few cities to maintain a fully functioning recycling program throughout the COVID pandemic, the department is now focused on significantly increasing recycling participation citywide, utilizing targeted neighborhood-based campaigns to encourage proper recycling. The department's transportation division, under the leadership of Deputy Commissioner Richard Montanez, remains committed to the city's Vision Zero initiative and the strategic approach to the city's overall safe and complete transportation network, as well as management of the massive new federal infrastructure bipartisan infrastructure law funded public works projects for much needed roadway, bridge, traffic infrastructure reconstruction and upgrades. The scope and level of this work represents a tremendous opportunity to stabilize and extend the life of transportation infrastructure assets across the city for years to come. We are now already actively managing 30 BIL funding projects with an estimated total cost of $39.1 million this fiscal year alone. Streets also continues to capitalize on roadway resurfacing operations in order to maximize paving through the city using both city forces and federally funded contracts. Our plans for FY24 will allow us to continue to expand initiatives targeted to improve infrastructure and provide multimodal traffic safety solutions throughout the city. A brand new public traffic safety enforcement program has recently been established, promising to enhance the city's ability to regulate traffic and promote driver, pedestrian, and bicycle safety in Philadelphia and enforcement of abandoned vehicle removal in the city, making significantly quality of life improvements for residents and businesses. And effective July 1st, streets will complete the transition of the city's school crossing guard program from the police department to streets, formally adding this citywide program to the department. The streets department and its employees continue to rigorously pursue our mission to clean, green, and safe streets. We're excited to present a proposed budget today that we believe will allow us to make tremendous progress in addressing many of the department's strategic priorities. We therefore request your favorable consideration of this budget request, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. The deputies and staff and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for the work you do. We really appreciate having you as a member of the team in your various capacities over the years. She feels like we all grew up together in government. It's good stuff. Commissioner, got a couple of quick questions. On the public safety officers, and thank you, and great graduation, really exciting. A part of the responsibilities and role is the abandoned vehicle removal. Can you tell me when that will start? I think we're going to be working with the parking authority also.
Yeah, so we've been in the process of the training period to ensure that they adequately provide information and identify those vehicles that are illegal on the streets and eligible to be removed and considered abandoned. Deputy Commissioner Chris Newman, has been working very closely and has the details on specific time dates. So I'm going to ask Chris to step in and answer the specific dates on the deadlines that we expect to start that part of the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Deputy.
Good morning, Council President. I'm Christopher Newman, Deputy Commissioner for Administration. In terms of abandoned vehicles, I know that they were recently trained in doing certain work for the police department, and I believe they are out now actually identifying vehicles to verify if the abandoned vehicles are out there so that the police department can take action and do the disposition needed to get the abandoned vehicles off the streets. I'm going to defer to Crystal Jacob-Shipman if that information is more specific that she can give with regard to that. She's the executive director of the program.
Good morning.
Good morning, Council President, Council members. Crystal Jacobs-Shipman, Executive Director of Public Safety Programs for the Philadelphia Department of Streets Transportation Division. And Deputy Commissioner Newman is correct. We have gone through training with the Neighborhood Services Unit of the Police Department, and we are actually identifying those vehicles for removal and reporting that back to streets so that they can come tow and get those vehicles off the street.
So, okay, let me understand. So we graduated 20, I think, public safety officers. So in terms of the citywide nature of the vehicle removal, it's a big city, a lot of cars out there, and the traffic designation, is that even remotely enough people to do that work? I'm just not seeing the numbers. How do we do that with only 20 people?
Chris, did you want me to continue or?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Council President, that we would probably need more people, because the other thing to keep in mind is that these traffic safety officers are not only doing abandoned vehicle disposition in support of that, but they're also going to be doing traffic management, priority intersections in Center City, Philadelphia, and in high injury network corridors throughout the city.
So is there a request for an increase in the budget? You knew that was coming, right?
We did request in FY2024 to get some things with regard to our traffic safety officers supported, specifically in class 300 and class 200. So we did ask for a marginal increase, but we didn't ask for a significant number of new positions just yet. Our focus this year is really just kind of standing up the program. As you know, we stood up the program within about 3 months, which in my experience with the city is incredibly quick. Now we want to make sure that it works. I would anticipate next fiscal year we'll be asking for more positions.
Okay. And I understand that's the answer you have to give today. But let's be real. We have set extremely high expectations of this program. We've been standing there taking pictures. It was great, the whole 9 yards. Everybody's excited after 4 or 5 years. And now we're going to go out there, the term half-stepping. I mean, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And we can use 20, and that's not going to be enough to deal with the volume as it relates to traffic issues just in Center City and University City alone, just dealing with that. So the expectation that we're going to be able to do what we need to do with this abandoned vehicle removal, which is pretty high on the list. I even had people running for mayor making commercials about it, right? Why don't we just do what we need to do? I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't. And I understand you have to give certain answers. You need to be teeing these people up now for the next class. Because initially we were supposed to be doing 40. And we pared it back to 20 because of the COVID and, the delay in the implementation and the FOP. And I know I don't expect you all to answer that today, but I'm just putting it out there that if we're going to do this, let's do this. I don't want to have people thinking, I don't know about my colleagues, been out there telling people, oh, the abandoned car removal crew is coming. And I don't want us standing there looking stupid, right, when they don't get moved.
Understood, Council President. We certainly will work with your office and council and budget. And if we can get more positions, absolutely. We will definitely use them, and we will definitely put them to work to start increasing the number of cars we can get off the streets.
Miss Waxman, you still on the call?
Yes, sir.
So you hear that, right?
Yes, definitely.
So, as the deputy chief bean counter, you can tell Rob, the chief bean counter, that you need to come correct. I mean, if we're gonna do this, let's do this, right? Let's get because I understand that this is a 1-year initiative as approved by the arbitration, right? Am I wrong?
I believe so. I'd defer if I don't know if Chris knows that, but obviously we'll look at that and understand what we can begin to explore what a multi-year program might look like.
Chris?
Are you asking, Council President, if this is just a 1-year process?
My understanding by the arbitration, the FOP, is that we were given the authorization for a 1-year initiative by the public safety officers working with the Philadelphia Parking Authority and sweeping the city of Philadelphia. Am I incorrect? Did we get it?
So my understanding is that there wasn't a time limit associated with it, that this was our responsibility and that we were going to be working with the police department going forward in perpetuity as long as this program was in existence. That's how I understood it.
Okay, well, I hope the way you understood it is the
I
appropriate.
hope so too. Yeah, I hope so as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, because I was a little disappointed at that, what I heard. All right, so either way, and I don't have to belabor the point, but Ms. Waxman, you're one of the money people. Can we please resource this thing appropriately, so it can be successful?
Well, certainly, yeah. Obviously, as you know, the budget process is a process, and we're always happy to work with you as we move through it.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it's not our thing. It's like our thing. I mean, this is something we need to get these people trained and out on the street. Let me ask you. I know that's a long question. There was a question I had about the issue with respect. Can you explain on the transportation fund, the infrastructure component of that, Commissioner?
Yes.
Can you explain exactly what that is, the infrastructure? I understand it.
And for clarification, are you referencing the bipartisan infrastructure funding that we get monies from the federal government?
So is that what you were just talking about, the funding from the bipartisan infrastructure program and how it's implemented in the city of Philadelphia? So, with that infrastructure that was designated authorizations for that type of funding, how is that going to be implemented in the city?
Well, it comes in through, obviously we're working with the administration and in terms of getting funding for our capital programs, bridges, roadways, several projects that support Vision Zero. So we're working with Otis, Office of Transportation and Infrastructure and Sustainability. So we've had several key projects. Great Streets is one of them. We have raised funding to address issues. We just received a $30 million grant for that to improve our roadway conditions around high injury network. These are much needed improvements that we can not only change and reconstruct, but modernize our city to address these issues. Last year, we had over 121 deaths related to vehicle crashes. And so this money is desperately needed to reinvest in our neighborhood for traffic calming measures. We put in monies for the budget to be able to staff up to ensure that we have enough engineers and administrators when that money is available and it's in our possession, which it is now, that these projects are ready to go. And so that's been the problem of our issues with the past. When we receive grant money, it takes so long in order for us to be able to complete projects. And I know that's been a frustration to you and many other city council members, but we're now in a position where we're staffing up. I believe, and Chris can correct me, that we're about 70% staffed up in terms of the positions, which is a pretty good rate to replace and hire engineers in this market, in this economy. We want to make sure that we have those positions in place when the funding is available, that projects can be administered, bid out, and ready to go.
Okay, and that's okay, and that all these will be eligible activities. Cool. Okay, I just wanted to get clarity on that. All right, I'll come back on my next round. On the next round, move to my colleagues. Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. Just a couple brief questions. First, I just want to give a shout out to Carlton Williams, Mr. Keith Warren, Steve Lorenz, Rich Montanez, Christy Del Rossi, Kevin O'Connell, just for your hard work and your dedication and just being responsive when my office calls, whether it's addressing a pothole, whether it's addressing the issue of illegal dumping or cameras or the various street renamings that we do. And I may have to call the last minute trying to get a sign moved from one side of the street to another side of the street, and y'all being patient with me. And so I just want to thank your whole team, because I know sometimes it gets a little tense as relates to, me going back and forth and trying to get things done. But I do thank you and your team for just being patient and working with us. And so in the spirit of the Just Serve initiative, advocated by my colleague, Councilman Jamie Carter here, I have a variety of different quality of life questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
First and foremost, regarding street repaving. My colleague, Councilman Jones, had a pothole patrol initiative a couple years ago, right? And so in this upcoming budget process, I see that we have about, for the paving of roads, you and your team, just give me an idea of the amount of roads that's supposed to be paved. I think it's 75 miles, but y'all have a report that says in order to maintain our streets to maintain our streets in a good way, about 131 miles a year should be paved.
Yes.
And so can you give us an update on, why we aren't doing more as opposed to less as it relates to street repaving and addressing the issue of potholes? And then I'm gonna sign on this next question as relates to, I know there's been different organizations that try to partner with the city of Philadelphia regarding street cleaning, right? And obviously the unions don't want us privatizing outside vendors to do street cleaning. And so can we expand, right? The street cleaning crew that we used to have. I know at Point Breeze Avenue, we used to have a crew that would come down every day and clean up the corridor, but we want to see, how do we have a robust team that actually go into the neighborhoods if we're really being serious about the issue of litter and trash inside our neighborhoods? And so if we can't go private, which I don't support, right? How do we expand the work that we're doing on a city-wide basis with city support from the streets department with a citywide residential cleaning program? Those two questions: street repaving, the mileage of paving that we're going to be doing, and also street cleaning crew. And special shout out to, I don't really consider them parts of the streets department, but I do see Michael Carroll on here, who's a part of Otis. Y'all all kind of a team, right? But I know Carlton, on the commissioner side of things, you kind of are the boss when it comes to all things streets, and all of those agencies, all of those departments I mentioned under you. But I am going to give a shout out to your partner as well, Michael Carlton. I know y'all put your heads together on a variety of different issues. And thank you, Mike, always being patient with me as well and work with me about a variety of different issues. So let me wrap up on that. Go ahead, Commissioner Carlton.
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you for the acknowledgement of the employees. I really appreciate and enjoy working with you and all the council members' offices. Whatever the issue is, we try to get a result that's very positive and favorable for the citizens of Philadelphia. Regarding street paving, it's been a challenge. Yes, our goal was to pave 131 miles each year to keep our streets in a state of good repair. We've made significant investments, the administration, last year over $100 million, and this year an additional $60 million to be able to address some of our most dangerous roadways in the city of Philadelphia to get them back in a state of good repair. We do have some challenges that we've had to overcome, and Mike Carroll will be able to address the one issue with regards to ensuring that not only do we pave our streets, but we repair our ramps as well. And that is a significant amount of resources of that $60 million that will ensure that not only the streets are being repaved, but our ramps are being done as well. And that's the ADA, Americans with Disability ramps. So we're working very closely to try to get to that goal. Those ramps cost money. Last year, we invested in a crew in reference to getting them trained up so that we can reduce the cost. But on average, they could cost anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 per ramp at an intersection for us to be able to pave a street, where it takes us approximately a couple of $1,000 to pave an entire street. When you add the ramps in, that drives the cost up significantly. So we're working through that, which is the challenge of getting that much amount of money to help us reach that 131 mile goal. Do I think we're able to get there? Not with this current funding level and the current funding matrix. Mike can probably talk a little bit more about that because of the ramps. So in order for us to get to 131 miles, it'll cost us about 120 to 130 more $1 million in order for us to get there. And that's an annual expenditure. That's not one time. So many people hear that amount of money and think that the problem is solved. No, that would be an annual expenditure for us to do 131 miles of roadway every year. Mike, I didn't know if you wanted to add to it.
I'll just add a couple comments. This is Mike Carroll. I'm the Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability. First, Councilmember Johnson, I want to thank you as well for all the acknowledgments and acknowledging the teamwork that takes place between the Streets Department and the Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, Sustainability, because that's how we get things done, right? through the teamwork. So I also want to call out the law department and their fantastic work in defending the city. We were involved in litigation, folks should probably be aware, and we are very close to settlement. The settlement has been agreed to by both the plaintiffs and the city in the role of defendant, and it just requires us to get through some extra process here before it's certified, and we expect that to take place this summer. So that sort of sets the rules for how we're going to do paving in combination with the curb ramps moving forward. And you got some of the figures from Commissioner Williams, but just to put another set of numbers to it, the cost of paving a mile of street is going to be about 25% paving, asphalt, maybe up to 30% paving, and then it's going to be about 60 to 75% curb ramps. And that's a ratio which makes it very hard for us to scale up. But what we're trying to do is to organize it so that we're able to do that as efficiently as possible. And we're making sure that everybody is doing their fair share. And so what that means is when you have other folks who are working in the right of way, whether they're utilities, they're developers, maybe the state that's doing work on state routes or crossing local routes on state routes, that they are all triggering curb ramps. And so we need to make sure that the folks that are triggering the curb ramps are fixing the curb ramps before the city comes along. And so we're working on trying to get some more tools in our toolbox to make sure that everybody's doing their fair share. That it's an organized process, that we only build a ramp once to make it compliance, and we're not coming through tearing up new ramps when we do other work. So that coordination is going to help quite a bit. But as the commissioner said, there is a significant increase in investment that's going to be required in order to address the whole package of needs. So the paving itself, addressing the potholes, preventing the potholes by doing the paving, but also getting those ramps done and making sure our ramps are compliant and folks with accessibility needs don't have major issues. I just wanted to add those comments. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councilmember.
And do we have time for me to answer the second part of your question about cleaning and litter? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, the bell is for the questions. But
okay, sorry. Yeah. So in regards to cleaning illegal dumping and litter, council member, as you know, this is one of our top priorities. It is our biggest priority in terms of illegal dumping and cleaning in the city of Philadelphia. We work with community groups all the time. We work with many of them in your district and throughout. Most notably, we have SANSA, the University City District. We have neighborhood block captains. We work with any group that's voluntarily willing to help us improve the cleanliness and conditions of our city.
I want to do a deeper dive and just zero in on a particular initiative.
Yeah.
So so you have nonprofit groups and for-profit groups, right?
Yeah.
That want to partner to actually do residential block by block street cleaning. There is a grievance from District Council 33, the sanitation folks, right, against the city because they feel like we're privatizing outside contractors to do what would essentially be their work. And so I know there's a crew that they're saying that normally would do this work that's underfunded. But if they were funded, it would be no need to bring in an outside private contractor to do this work. And so I'm just trying to figure out if that is the case, right? How do we go about investing and expanding that particular cleanup crew that's specifically not doing commercial corridors, but going block by block, actually doing the neighborhood cleanups? Is that something that we can explore? Is that something that exists that we can expand?
Yeah, I think we're already started that process with mechanical street sweeping. And we're going block by block. Last year, the number of blocks that we've cleaned and the amount of tonnage that we picked up and the number of people that we've invested in, and this council has invested in along with the administration, is accomplishing that goal. Yes, and the more people we have, the better. Obviously, this can't be just a government alone project, that we need the support of the community and community residents, but the core of our cleaning program is the investments that we are making in the mechanical street sweeping that is paying off. 96% of all residents, when we surveyed, said they want to see this program expanding, and that's the direction that we're going in. And we're going in those neighborhoods that need it the most, which are the most litter challenged neighborhoods, and normally in areas where our citizens are most vulnerable. So we are making those investments, we're moving forward, and we'll continue to work with nonprofit organizations and people who want to help keep our city clean. Regarding privatization, you know that is a very sticky issue when it comes down to the union. We have to tread carefully, and we work to cooperate with them as best we can. And there is a hearing scheduled to determine the outcome of that particular issue.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all I have, Council President. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Tim.
Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gautier.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning, Commissioner.
Morning, Council Member.
I wanted to start by thanking you and Deputy Commissioner Warren and Deputy Commissioner Montanez and just the entire team for the work you do on behalf of our neighborhoods every day. And thanks to Councilmember Johnson for the shout out to Just Services PHL and those great questions. And I also wanted to say that I completely support the Council President's push to get more public safety officers trained and on the street. That position is crucial to our ability to really deal with a lot of quality of life concerns that we hear about from residents all the time. My first questions are about illegal dumping. During last year's budget cycle, the Streets Department requested an additional 1.5 illegal dumping crews to keep up with demand. And this year, the administration is proposing to add one more crew for a total of 4, I believe. I look forward to learning more about the plans to hire and deploy this crew, but I'm curious to why we're stopping at just one, especially considering that the city received some 24,114 illegal dumping complaints in the last year alone. So I wanted to ask you, when can it be estimated that the crew will be hired and deployed? Why are we just stopping at one crew? I'd also like to hear about what the additional crew from the last budget cycle allowed us to do in terms of dumping, and what will one additional crew get us in terms of addressing the significant need?
Great. Thank you for your question, Council Member. Illegal dumping is a high priority for you and everyone else, including our department. It's probably the highest priority in our department next to paving. It continues to be rampantly happening in the city of Philadelphia, and we're trying to address those issues immediately. And illegal dumping crews, while it doesn't sound like a lot in terms of one, it is a significant number. It's a 33-person crew that consists of multiple forms of equipment and resources and people, compactors, front-end loaders, stationary personnel that's on the streets doing hand cleaning. So one crew may not seem like a lot, but it is significant to be able to address these issues on time. Last year alone, they cleaned up over 13,000 tons off the city of streets of Philadelphia in certain areas. Having 4 crews would allow us to improve and increase response times to dumping areas. Because as you know, and as my friend Tom Conway can tell you, the theory of graffiti is that the longer you leave it up, the more it happens. And so having a quicker response time to be able to clean up sites, along with the use of cameras, which I know we'll be talking about as well, will give us the resources necessary to reduce it and eventually eliminate it when we can not only pair it with catching and preventing it from happening in the first place.
Thank you so much. I can appreciate that this is a big job because we have a lot of dumping going on, particularly in certain neighborhoods, right? I think my question is about how many crews we need to get the problem addressed fully, to have full capacity to address this significant problem. And so while I can appreciate that one crew is big, it's 33 people, it gives us a lot of capacity, what I'm asking about is what we need to get the job entirely done. What's your assessment of that?
Right now, we would like to have one dumping crew per district. And so that would go from 4 crews to 10 crews. Actually, the amount that's happening in areas that we've had big challenges, and I know it's all over the city, but I'm gonna just use Kensington, for example. We sometimes need 1 and 2 crews to work in those areas, given the amount of illegal dumping that occurs. Some areas don't require as much because they have different forms of litter, but we would like to have 1 per district and to be able to strategically place them in locations that have the greatest need. Again, based on the amount and the data that we get from 311, based on the number of complaints that we routinely clean, and we also often go out to locations where we constantly clean up one day and then the next week it's dumped on again. Those are the areas where we focus our resources the most. So 1 per district, but again, in some areas we move those crews around where there's the greatest need.
And getting 1 more for this budget cycle, that would get us to 4. Am I correct?
That would get us to 4, yes.
So that's a small amount of where you think we need to be, right? That's the small amount of the related to the capacity that you really think we need to have.
It's about 50%, close to 50% of what we currently are going to be budgeted for. Yes.
Okay, so I would press why just 1, right? Given the need that we have. And then I wanted to ask you another question. What tools are you using to measure success on the issue of illegal dumping? And also, can you just clarify whether we've hired all of the staff, that we were budgeted for last year with regards to this issue specifically?
Yeah, so we do have the other dumping crew has started, and we're in the process with this budget year. We'll be hiring the next 2 to ensure that we meet up to 4. Deputy Commissioner Newman can confirm the number of people that we have. Deputy Commissioner?
Yes, Commissioner. Hello, council member.
Hello.
We have hired the individuals for the 2 crews for this fiscal year. They are on board.
Okay, and when did we do that? How long did that take?
So there was 2 additional positions that we had to hire. They were our last ones, and I believe we got them on board this past month.
Okay.
They were drivers.
Okay, thank you so much. I have some additional questions if I have time for additional questions. Obviously, you know that street safety and traffic calming is a very important issue for my district, and we've met about it various times over the last couple of years. So I have a few questions on that issue. My opinion is that strict adherence to PennDOT's criteria for speed cushions is very outdated and needs to be changed if we're going to respond to our neighborhoods with all of the requests that they have for street calming. I know that Streets has been looking at making changes to the policy, so I'm wondering when you expect those changes to be made, and does your FY2024 budget propose funding increases for speed cushion installation that would align, to those changes? And just by our rough, calculations in my office, we saw that most of the time, about 85% of the time, our neighbors are getting rejected when they're asking for traffic calming interventions. And so that's where these questions are coming from.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, we agree with you 100%, Councilmember Gautier. The process for getting speed cushions installed is very problematic in terms of the length of time and the response that we've received, especially when it comes down to areas like schools, recreation centers, and areas in our high injury network. And so one of the things that I've proposed and worked with City Council to try to address is to give us the flexibility to install these without having to go through that long process. And so we're actually now putting together a plan to work with City Council. We'll be meeting with you and briefing with your staff members in the next couple of weeks to identify and prioritize those locations that need it to most and to begin the installation. We've also worked with Otis, who did a study to also show, based on crash data, these traffic calming mechanisms are necessary. We're going to cross-reference the request with that data and then come up with a priority list to share with your office and begin installation immediately. We have a $2 million allocation that we're using from BIL money to begin this spring, and we'll start in those problematic areas ASAP. So that's one of the things that we're working on as well.
Just a quick clarification. Does the work that you're doing and the plan that you're making include moving away from this very strict set of PennDOT criteria that does not work for neighborhood streets?
Yes, it does. And so we want to have criteria stated at the front end to show you which streets aren't eligible and why. So you don't have to wait until a study is done to tell you, well, this street was a state highway, so it's not eligible after only waiting 12 weeks. That information will be put out in front so people can see where the rejections are up front so they won't waste their time going through a study. And if necessarily, we will go to PennDOT and say, we request that, because we can always request that PennDOT gives us permission to do that as opposed to waiting for a study to be told no. So we understand your frustration. We certainly going to work closely with your office to move this process forward much faster when it comes down to speed cushions. In addition, Deputy Commissioner Richard Montanez can tell you we're also looking at lowering some of the standards in terms of what it would take if cars aren't going 40 miles an hour. Well, maybe we reduce it to 25 miles an hour because we know that one crash that kills somebody is too many. And so we want to work very closely to try to ensure that all of these meet the criteria and try to address it. So Rich, you very briefly, I know the time has run up here. You want to address that as well?
Good morning, Council Member. Richard Montanez, Deputy Commissioner of Streets. We have reduced. We've actually talked to other cities in the Commonwealth. We have reduced our criteria to further, and we will be coming out to you and discussing. So now we've actually, instead of the +10, it's actually a +5 miles per hour. And we're also looking to see if the right speeds are out there, as in the posted speed limits. We're looking to lower some of those.
Thank you so much. That's really important work, and we're grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Carlton, Commissioner Williams, you, Montanez, Keith Warren, rock stars, in my view. I remember during the height of the pandemic, literally coming out in front of my house and clapping for the trash men coming up, picking up just routine trash pickup. And I remember feeling that the city was still open, that we were still operating because of their efforts. I know what you went through with COVID. I know what you lost by way of your workers. So I want to thank you publicly on the record for soldiering through that. I want to cite a couple of questions. We put $1 million into street lighting, alleyway lighting, and to restore the lighting fixtures in alleys. We wanted to repair the ones that were broke. We wanted to install ones where needed. Where are we with that program? I had to, while you bring somebody up to answer that, one of my staffers had, when we first brought them on board, we literally had to walk through an alley so they understood what an alley was, why it needed to be clean, why it needed to be well lit. So after that, they had a deeper appreciation for alleys. So with that, where are we with the alley lighting program?
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Council Member. I'm going to let Deputy Commissioner Montanez give you an update. Ones that can be immediately repaired, we work with our maintenance contractor to address ASAP. The ones that are new, required installation, which majority of that $1 million will be used for, requires an investment in terms of a contractor installation. Deputy Commissioner Montanez can give you an update of the ones that you requested, and we'll give you a status report on the ones that were easily repaired through our maintenance contractor. So, Deputy Commissioner Montanez.
Good morning, Council Member. Richard Montanez, Deputy Commissioner of Streets. So we're in the process of putting out the $1 million to bid. It's roughly a little, I believe it was 533. I can verify that information for you, Council Member. But it's about 533 new installs is what we're going to use the money for. As far as the repairs, we are trying to address them with our one with sanitation, Keith Warren, as cleaning the alley so that the crews can get in there to fix them. And two is through the ESCO program. We're also going in there and to try to repair all these alleys that are current alley lights that are broken. We're going to try to repair them through the ESCO.
So for me and members like Goudier and definitely Kenyatta Johnson, those are public safety issues. Without them, our first responders can't navigate through those alleys to respond to fires, to respond to instances where they're chasing bad guys. It's an important part of it. So thank you for that. The second question I would have is that some people, how do they say, weaponize trash pickup. There was a report done that showed a disparity between on-time pickups in some parts of the city versus delays in others. And that was at the height of the pandemic, which is clearly understood. Where are we at today with those kinds of on-time pickups throughout the city of Philadelphia?
Council member, first I would like to acknowledge Deputy Commissioner Keith Warren and his team, as you have done during the pandemic. We've received 30% more trash than we had in a normal collection cycle. And for people who don't know what that volume is, that's like adding an extra day and a half of trash to a collection week. So kudos to Deputy Commissioner Warren. When we had people that was out with the pandemic, even half the staff, even him and his team, we were all out there throwing trash. So we understand and we appreciate the acknowledgement. We are pleased to announce that our on-time collection rate, which is trash that is being collected by 3 p.m., is 97%. That is higher than we have been any other time in the last 10 to 15 years, even before the pandemic. And that is thanks to innovative leadership from Deputy Commissioner Warren and team, who put in a second collections crew that allows us to prioritize trash collection first. And we understood the complaints and we heard the residents, and we certainly heard from your offices and the frustrations that you experienced, and we were able to address it. And the administration added additional crews that allowed us to utilize trucks twice a day with a second shift and additional people. And recycling is even increasing as well. So we're pleased that ever since that initiative took place, the city will boast a 97% on-time collection rate. Trash picked up in every neighborhood of the city by 3 p.m.
Love it. Thank you for that update. I think it's important to cite problems, but it's also important to put on the record corrections. And so I'm glad that that happened. My final question is, everybody, I can't go to a community meeting without somebody requesting speed bumps. I am frustrated because as soon as we get them installed, I get another call from the same block or residents that hate the speed bumps. And so what is our current policy, and are you getting that same feedback? Watch what you wish for. And so what has been your response, reaction, experience with the installation of speed bumps?
Yeah, so the majority of our constituents want them because of the dangers that the speeding poses. I mean, people have seemed to unfortunately lost their minds the way they drive up and down residential streets and along corridors. And so this is something that we deem as a necessary part of controlling that and assisting as well as with our police with enforcement. On time to time, you are absolutely correct, council members. Some people get them in and then trucks start vibrating in their neighborhoods, and then they say, oh no, we don't want them there. And so we've tried to mitigate that by, number one, getting a petition of residents who will come through your office and say, yes, we want them there. And the vast majority has to say yes before we install them. And that's what starts the process. If we get community buy-in and support, then ultimately we will move forward with the process. We've utilized and toyed with rubber speed cushions, and those were the temporary ones. They're high maintenance though. Once they get hit by trucks or snow plows, we have to have a team to be able to put them back in place. So we prefer to use asphalt. The problem with asphalt is that they're permanent. And so we would have to jackhammer them out. And so you have to always teeter the residents' needs and what they ask for when we put them there versus the problems that's associated when they get there, having to try to remove them. Deputy Commissioner Montanez can confirm anything else that I might have missed out. Deputy Commissioner Montanez.
Thank you. Good morning, Councilmember Richard Montanez, Deputy Commissioner Street. You're absolutely right. We do get people who Once we put them in, can call the office complaining that they would like them removed, they don't want them, or they don't want them placed in front of their house. They don't mind as long as they're not in front of my house. And it becomes very difficult for the streets department to place these because the neighbors want them. We just don't want them in front of my house. So we have to find a location. And at times we are putting them where people do not want them just because we're trying to traffic calm and make the road safe.
Thank you so much. I just want to, for the record, say thank you to you. When we had a shooting at 61st and Columbia, we had the whole neighborhood out there. One of the issues was a dark driveway where people felt comfortable committing crimes. You were there, you stepped up to the plate, and you addressed the issue for the neighbors. Keith Warren winds up, I'm doing a neighborhood tour in Carroll Park, and we're walking around, we're looking at issues, short dumping in the neighborhood, and who walks up on a Saturday right next to me to take the complaints himself, but Keith Warren. So Commissioner Williams, you have a hands-on team, and I'm so very thankful for their responsiveness. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Lozada.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning, everybody. Commissioner, I want to reiterate what everyone has said, and that is that you and your team have always been amazing. Even prior to me coming here as a council person and working on the ground in the community, they've always been extremely responsive. Rich, Keith, Farouk, all of them. You guys are the real true heroes of our city because you kept us moving. And although sometimes we express frustration, you guys always receive that with a whole lot of grace, and you continue to show up and serve us. So I am extremely grateful. Thank you so much for all you all do. My question is around, well, I have a few questions, but and my frustration is the same as everybody else's, right? The street calming, the alleyways and all of that. I want to start off with the alleyways. I know that we're going to light them up and we're going to clean them up, but is there a plan to work with community residents to ensure that once we've cleaned them up to be able to install this lighting to make them safe to pass through? Are we working with community residents to keep them clean? Is there buy-in from community residents to ensure that we're not coming back 2 months from now and it's not passable?
I think you hit the key, council member, and thank you for your comments and acknowledgements, is that we have to work with residents to keep them clean. And that's one of the initiatives that we're launching, our Keep It Clean Philly program, to acknowledge and work with partnerships with community organizations to address issues of illegal dumping and litter, especially in our alleys and their challenges, because those are areas that's been dumped on for years. And so we have to have crews to actually go in and try to physically remove any type of debris. Encroachments sometimes occur, sometimes they lock them. These are big challenges in the department, but they're major safety issues that I know affect your district. Councilmember Johnson is constantly calling Councilmember Gautier's office. Those are some big challenges that we have to address. The keep it clean part of it is such a crucial part because we just don't have the resources to continue to monitor alleyways. They're actually private easements that people have to maintain as part of their property. Many times that doesn't occur, and we understand that we have to go in with city forces to do it. We use Future Track, which is a program that I hope to grow and expand, and to allow them to focus on alleyways along with our street lighting program. The investments we're making with our street lighting improvement project, otherwise known as ESCO, will also help improve lighting in those areas. But we can't continuously go back over alleys without the support of residents. So what we're going to do is continue to work with block captains. We're going to continue to work with concerned community residents, CDCs, and business improvement districts to focus on alleys. I'll just give you an example. Miss Benita Cummins out in the Strawberry Mansion area, she's been doing a wonderful job working with CLIP and working with our department and everyone else and the residents, getting them fired up about keeping alleyways clean. That should be a model and replica of what we do for the rest of the city.
Council President, point of information, please. Council President, I have a point of information.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the Council President. Well, let me take a little liberty then. Is it okay, Councilman Lozada, just for clarity? Is it okay, Council President, point of information?
We try to get a point of something.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
he can, he can.
So
I'm waiting
it's
to
kind of
acknowledge
it's kind of difficult to do this on the teams as opposed to in the council chambers, but
It's okay, Council President. I'm
it's
just
okay.
following protocol. Is it okay? May I have the right to just do a point of personal privilege, Council President, point of information?
Okay, Council President. Council, sir.
All right, thank you. Just
Awesome.
Commissioner, just for clarity, and this is when you say working in partnership with the neighborhoods to clean the alleyways, and once they're clean, you know, obviously it would be tough to maintain them and want the community involved. Is there a partnership with L&I to go after developers who are building and leaving all this debris inside the alleyways, right? And then leaving that burden, that hardship on the residents, right? And I see this consistently, definitely in Point Breeze and Grace Ferry. And it's left to the neighbors to kind of fend for themselves and kind of prove that they weren't responsible for the debris that comes from contracts. But clearly, if somebody's building a brand new property in the neighborhood, in the alleyway, and you see remnants of an old property and contractors' debris, is not the neighbors who've been living there all their lives, right? And it may be hard for them to prove, but yet they're carrying the burden of addressing the issue. How does that play into what Councilwoman Lozada is actually talking about in terms of these alleyways? Thank you, Council President.
And thank you, Council Member, for bringing that up. Yeah, when we have contractors that are actually building in the community and neighborhood, we have to encourage our residents, if they see this type of behavior, to report it so that we can work with L&I to get it addressed. I've worked very closely with Commissioner DePietro. Commissioner DePietro is very responsive in terms of those issues of having L&I issue violations and stop work orders for people who constantly violate the law in terms of dumping and not proper disposal of construction debris and material. And if they encroach upon the alleyway as well, that's the route that we need to continue to work with. But thank you for bringing that up, and we certainly will work with our partners at L&I to be able to address it.
And speaking about contractors, you know, in my district, on the south end of the district, we have a whole lot of development. And oftentimes there are multiple development projects happening at the same time, causing community residents a whole lot of burdens, not only because there isn't consideration taken when they're trying to walk safely to and from or through the development project, but also because a lot of their streets are ruined. And so you have these $400,000 and $500,000 homes, but their streets have all types of potholes from beginning to end. And so what are we doing to ensure that as development happens throughout the city, contractors, or is it the contractor or is it the streets department that's responsible for ensuring that the streets are paved and nice and passable?
Thank you, Council Member. Yeah, it's both. First of all, it's the contractor's responsibility to restore the street back into a passable, safe condition that's appropriate for the residents. And it's up to the streets department to enforce it to ensure that occurs, which is why we passed a moratorium on contractors who request utility cuts and new water services and utility services, that they place the street back in the original condition or a passable condition or a safe condition than they originally had when they started their project. Deputy Commissioner Montanez can talk about the moratorium and our goals in terms of enforcement to be able to address it. And if there are specific areas like in the lower end that we need to focus and target, I know it's over citywide because development is large. We need to focus on that to ensure that moratorium is being done accurately.
Commissioner, I wasn't sure because Deputy Managing Director Mike Carroll came on, whether he wanted to answer it first.
I'll just say, I mean, we've been working on making sure that the message is out there about our moratorium. Our moratorium is modeled on PennDOT's moratorium to make sure that, like as much as possible, we say you only dig once. And so it involves coordination, and we are improving that coordination. We've made some technology investments in what we call the guaranteed payment information system. There's a little bit more work we need to do. I certainly want to thank Council President for working with us to update some of the regulations and to work on part of the code 11700. So essentially, folks are paying into the fee program that helps us pay for these systems to make sure we've got the staff on board, and that, you know, that connection between what's going on in the street, if you're a utility, if you're a telecommunications firm, or if you're a developer, sort of like we talked about with ADA, is all coordinated with everything else that's going on before we pave the street. And we do a good job with a handful of the utilities. Of course, Water Department, as a city-run entity, works pretty well with us. Also, PGW, we're focused on making sure we get the best information back and forth. We do good coordination, but some of the private utilities are a little bit harder to wrangle, but I think we've seen some good progress, and we will stick with that moving forward.
I'd just like to put on the record that in the 7th Council District, we have a huge issue with that not happening. And so, you know, if I can work with someone, or if someone could please make it a point to visit these development projects once they are considered complete, that they come out and they look, they do pave, they pave in front of their project, their piece of the project, right? And so I think that it's unfair to residents to have to put up with it, and to the people who are purchasing the new property, right? I don't think that is fair to them either. So
Absolutely.
I'd just like to put that on the record.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And then Commissioner, I know that you guys are doing an amazing job in trash collection, but in Kensington, like you mentioned earlier, there is 24-hour activity, right? And so there's accumulation of trash, there's creation of trash. Your people clean, and within the hour or two, it looks like you didn't even come by. And so, you know, I sent a list to my council colleagues. I think I've also shared it with you about the possibilities of 24-hour collection in that footprint until we as government figure out, right, what we're going to do in that neighborhood. How do we do that? How do we continuously clean in the neighborhood that we've allowed where people to hang out in for 24 hours? Does that mean that can we look at something like that as a pilot, or is there a way to increase the amount of trash collection that is happening within that footprint?
Yeah, thank you, council member. We understand the challenges that we've had, and we've worked together and talked on numerous occasions, even before you came, council member, about the challenges that we have to deal with once we clean it up. How do we keep it clean? One of the things that we're working very closely with the Office of Emergency Management and the Managing Director's Office. We'll have dedicated crews along with CLIP to focus on increased services in those areas that need it the most. We have to try to change behavior through enforcement. Illegal dumping is rampant in our community across the city, especially in Kensington. We've put more cameras. We'll continue to place more cameras. I've made an investment of another $1 million for 150 more cameras. They will be placed in those areas that need it the most to try to prevent it from happening in the first place. I have a block captain that I would like to acknowledge from D in Westmoreland and McVeigh. She calls me through Facebook on personal calls to say, look, I just cleaned it up and the guy is out there cleaning it again, and here he is, and she's sending me pictures. So we do have to reconnect with our residents in that area because there are concerned members who need our support. We'll work with them and give them the tools necessary. It's without question that any additional resources that the city can provide throughout the city for illegal dumping and cleanliness to keep it clean. But it's a behavioral change that we have to get people in the mindset that they can't treat our city like a trash can. We come clean it up, and 2 hours later, like you said, people dump it again. If we need more receptacles, that's something that we can work with your office on as well as any of your council members. We just need the community support so they won't get abused. And we need the people to report, hey, they're taking in residential trash. Here's where they're coming from. Those are the type of relationships that's going to make a long-term difference when we talk about sustainability. It's easy for us to clean it up once. It's keeping it clean that makes it a challenge for us. And we all got to do our part to work together to make sure that's done.
And I appreciate that, but the community that I'm talking about are the outdoor neighbors, right? The folks that are living in addiction, that are living on the street. They're the ones that are creating the trash out there. They're the ones that are throwing it on the ground. they're the ones that are not being responsible or being held responsible. And so, kudos to all of those block captains and all of those community residents who consistently clean out in front of their homes, even though they are not the ones who are creating the trash, right? But the folks who we need to focus on are the people that we've allowed to take over those streets and create and accumulate the trash that's out there. And so that's the community I want to focus on, and I want to figure out together, right? How do we do that? Do we need to consistently clean? Because we're allowing them to be and live out there all day long, and we're allowing the activity that's continuing to happen out there all day long. And so when I talk about 24-hour trash collection or attention, I'm talking about that specific area that we've allowed people to live in without being able to address a lot of the other needs that are going on in there.
We're looking forward to working with your office on that, council member. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Phillips.
Thank you, Council President, and a good morning. We are 2 minutes to the afternoon for our viewing public. I'm City Council Member Anthony Phillips, and I represent the 9th District, which covers Northwest Philly, a little bit of North, and also parts of Northeast. I am happy to be part of this conversation with Commissioner Carlton Williams because, as you know, Commissioner, your role means a lot to the city of Philadelphia, and we have to do as much as possible to really clean up our streets. So let me get to my first question, and I love a lot of order. I love structure. So when it comes with this funding that we'll be presenting to you, giving to you, that you're proposing that we support you with this year. One of the structure items that I'm hoping that we can get from this is having data readily available for our neighbors. So, for example, when a neighbor makes a request for a speed cushion, an entire block, maybe there could be an online portal that they can go to so they can keep track of, where the process that they're in. Are they in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? Something that can also help our constituent service staff, I call it neighbor service staff, with really understanding where they are with the speed cushion process. And that way we can also understand where they are in the queue. So as opposed to us having to call, Mr. Montez and you all the time to say, hey, where we at? That type of process, if that could be a little bit more, not only public, but, not only just, for us, but public as well.
Yeah, thank you, council member. Appreciate your comment and question. Chris Picalsi works for Otis, and we work very closely with his office. We actually hired in the process and with the plan that I talked about earlier, a consultant to be able to review our process to show exactly what you're explaining, that what is the process for requesting a speed cushion and what is the criteria. I think that's what you're looking for as well. And then once it's approved, how fast that it gets actually done. Those are the 3 things I think would address the issues that you're bringing up. And so I'm going to ask Chris to talk about the consultant that we work with to identify that process for not only speed cushions, but most of the traffic calming requests. So we get other requests such as, rumble strips, or we get requests such as bump outs. And what's the difference between a long-term project like a slow zone versus just a request for speed cushions. So I'm going to let Mr. Picalsi from Otis come in and talk a little bit about the relationship we have and what you can expect.
And just might I add, just for 10 seconds, also, Mr. Picalsi, can you speak on the idea of being able to, I know we talked about being more transparent with neighbors around the process. How do we also, have a part of this funding letters that can come out from you all saying that, we understand you had requests, here's where you are. It can go to all of the neighbors on that block. And then also periodic updates through letters as well, letter communication so that we can keep communication streamlined. So again, this is about systems and organization around communication.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Council Member. Yeah, I'm Chris Pahalski. I'm the Director of Policy and Strategic Initiatives at Otis. Like the Commissioner said, we have been studying the traffic calming request system, and that this study started with listening, and I think we started before your time in office, but we did have interviews with a number of different council offices and residents to see what was working for them and what was not working for them in the process. And I think you hit on what we heard a lot of other places. Part of it is they just want the thing, but then the part of it is they were dissatisfied about the communication. They didn't understand where it was. It was a lot of work. Council members and their staff, it was a lot of work. So this is an idea of what we've been talking about is having a system where you not only you can see on a map where if you're eligible from the very beginning, but having a prioritization system where we could tell people, listen, this is where you are in the queue, you're number 150th or 50th or whatever it is, and if we can install that many cushions, we'll get to you this year. If not, we'll put you on the list for next year. That kind of transparent communication where the decision making is transparent and the communication is open has worked very well for our neighborhood slow zones. That's also another program where people apply, and I've heard from a lot of residents say, oh, I put in an application, we didn't get it. I don't like that we didn't get it, but we understand why I didn't get it, and that there's this neighborhood that has higher needs. So I think that's definitely a part of it, having a system where you can go and look up where you are without having to call somebody. We haven't considered letters yet, but maybe that is something as we're working with Streets IT to implement some of these ideas, and with 311 that we can look into.
Thank you. The next question I have, Commissioner, I want to say thank you. We're super excited about the legislation that I introduced, and now it's passed around speed calming measures around all of our schools in the city of Philadelphia. And I wanted to learn more about what is it going to take to roll that out in terms of funding and also enforcement? About how many schools do you suspect that we can do in the city of Philadelphia and district? Of course, every district council person would love to have all of their schools with the cushions, but has there any thought around a timeline and framework in terms of implementation from staff yet?
Yeah, well, this year, immediately, we identified $2 million dedicated to speed cushions for this initiative. In reference to the amount that covers, that is a contracted cost that we're expecting to come in, but we estimate somewhere around 500 speed cushions will be installed with that $2 million initially. As we get more resources, the bipartisan infrastructure dollars, we want to invest in great streets, which means that once we pave a location, we just don't want a piecemeal paving. We need to look at not only reconstructing, but modernizing our streets on a whole scale basis, holistically. So when we go through streets, if we're planning on putting speed cushions in while we're paving, it makes sense to do all of it simultaneously rather than having to come back. And so that's the initiatives that we're working on with Otis. When we get this funding, we have one shot to get it right. And we should be doing neighborhoods at a time and communities at a time, as opposed to piecemealing streets at a time where we're having to come back and try to do it over again. Because I don't think we're ever going to have this opportunity again where we have these resources. So initially, the $2 million will cover 500 speed cushions. We're going to prioritize them based on the information that you currently gave us versus the plan that Chris Paholski just talked about, identifying the most vulnerable areas first.
Yeah. I know my time is out. I just want to quickly ask, of those 500 speed cushions that we have, how can we work closely to see that we get them around our rec centers and our schools? And there would be a certain allotment, because is there a way that we can support you with more funding so we can get pretty much even more, more speed cushions? I don't want us to have a constraint, on the speed cushions, but we just want to be able to make sure at least all of our schools and rec centers, and even libraries at this point, well, at least schools and rec centers are covered.
Yeah, so we certainly will work with council on that. I plan on, if it hasn't already been scheduled, setting up a briefing with your offices to show the number of requests that you currently have versus what we have through that plan that we've worked on with Chris just talked about with the consultant that shows our most vulnerable populations and which areas in community. Our goal is to cross-reference those areas around schools, rec centers, and places along the high injury network, and to begin the installations from there. As additional funding goes in, we'll complete those lists adequately. So as we meet and discuss those plans with you, we'll have a better idea of what it would take, and then I'll get you that information.
CP, I have time for one quick question. Yeah, so, I just want to quick. Well, let me just mention something. I would love to learn more about. In our district, we have driveways issues. I know the city has traditionally not taken care of the driveways. It's been a residence issue, but I would love to learn to see if there's any particular plans on the books that we've been thinking through to fix driveways and help have the city cover and support not just the alley part of the driveway, but the entire driveway, especially ones that are utilized often and damaged by the sanitation truck workers, unfortunately. But
I'll actually answer that question for the commission. Yeah, Councilman. There's actually a conversation with, as a part of the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative funding, we're trying to we're having conversations about driveways and retaining walls. And it's been somewhat of a challenge to determine one, not necessarily just the cost, but the whole process. Right. So you can check with, from our team, Janae Mumford, because we are looking at some potential pilot programs to do some of those driveways. But the issue with respect to the neighbors and all the other aspects of it. So yeah, check with Janae Mumford. She's the one that's working with the administration on that from our side.
Thank you, CP. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Oh, real quick, Commissioner, since you're referencing, Councilman Phillips was referencing schools, there's a school, actually a community school, Gideon. And I want to thank you all for putting out speed bumps and signage and stop signs, but we do not have the flashing lights when school lets out. It's an elementary school. I know Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson is very familiar with it. That's right in her family's neighborhood. That's the streets department that does that? Or is it the police department?
Yeah, yes, we work with the school district to have them installed. It's a capital cost. How much does it cost, Kasim? I see you on there, or Rich. Yeah. Kasim Ali from our Transportation Engineering Division, Chief Engineer. Kasim?
No, Kasim well. Yeah.
Hi, this is Kasim Ali. I'm the Chief Traffic Engineer with the city. Yes, it is a responsibility of Streets Department in conjunction with the school district. And it costs anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000, depending on how many we have to put around the perimeter. But we'll certainly be happy to look into it. And the commissioner can respond back with the timeline.
Yeah, can you look at that for us, please?
Absolutely.
So Gideon on Glenwood Avenue between 29th and 28th Street.
I got it. Thank you.
Helpful. Thank you. Speaking of the council lady, Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Council President. And I too have to say thank you, CP. You know, you and I had the partnership over at Gideon during the pandemic. So we encountered that quite frequently. So I just wanted to say thank you as well. But also to you, Commissioner Williams and Deputy Commissioner Warren, who I call all the time, probably too much, Rich Montanez, Crystal Jacob Shipman, Kasim Ali, Benjamin Barron, Stephen Lorenz, and I have to also mention Clip because a lot of times Tom Conway has to coordinate with you all, and I appreciate the work that he does as well. And so I just have to give him a shout out because we go way back in city government, and he has just always been the same and always very responsive, along with everyone in your entire department. So I thank you for your work. I'm going to quickly go through my questions so I can get them on the record, and then hope to, whatever we don't get to, I will submit. So last year I had asked you all about how you're looking at standard heat exposure for our workers. So I just wanted to know, has there been any progress made on that issue? How are you all looking at heat exposure, recognizing that our weather events have been more extreme? And so, for instance, this winter, you know, we really didn't get a lot of snow. So we don't know what this summer will bring. So I just wanted to ask about your standard and or policy around heat exposure for the workers. In addition to that, from a workforce development standpoint, if you all could speak to how many positions you all have that are what we call entry point positions in the city, and how you are working with the school district to recruit young people into city service, but also what pathways do you have as far as any jobs that have either changed specification that now young people can move directly into upon graduation? I'll start there, and then I have just a couple more questions, so if we could do just brief answers. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Council Member, for always supporting the department. We really appreciate it, and the acknowledgments that you just listed for all of our employees that work with your office. We work very closely with the unions to try to get our staff members the resources that they need in terms of uniform apparel to make sure that they're properly equipped. And so we've invested in different types of shirts and reflective vests that are lighter, so they're not as cumbersome when they're out throwing trash. We listen to the employees and the union representatives to pick out which type of uniform apparel that would help them do their jobs better. And so I think what's the most important acknowledgement is that we've heard what our employees have said, and we've delivered on those type of services. And our numbers are down in terms of those type of emergencies and exposures as a result. So we don't have as many people who are calling out with heat emergencies any longer because we are having different type of uniform gear. Our policies around heat emergencies, and when there is a code red or a code orange, is to try to get our people out in and out as quickly as possible. The union has requested that sometimes we start earlier in the day so that we don't hit the high points of heat. And we allow them to do that when possible. They get out in and out the weather as quickly as possible. When we do have issues, we make sure all of our trucks are equipped with water, and so they can respond quickly and fast if someone is having an emergency, and we keep our communications open. One point of note that I would like to say is extremely important that we work closely with the union on in terms of safety. We had the tragic death of one of our employees last year in November, Akeem Johnson. As a result of that, we work with the police department. We work with union to come up with a policy for priority response and assistance. And I want to thank the police department on record for delivering that, and a communications plan that when these incidents happen, that everyone is notified so that we can either pull them off the streets or put them in a safe place. So those are the areas that we're working on in terms of safety, not only when it comes to the environmental conditions, but all of the conditions that happen in our city that we're trying to keep our employees safe. Chris, you have the numbers in terms of entry level and hiring. I do want to highlight our Future Track program, which is a kind of a base program that allows people to get familiar with the department, whether it's transportation or sanitation, if they want entry level work within the streets department, that helps them get gainful employment through the city of Philadelphia. It has been very successful in getting young people involved, especially at the age of 18 years old and starting, but we do have older participants who may be 27, 28, 29 and to still participate in the program as well if they got a late start in life or looking for a new opportunity. So these are the type of programs that's being helpful. Chris specifically has the numbers in terms of new entries and hires and how many vacancies that we might have in the department and what we're trying to do to fill them with the type of people that you just described. Chris?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Council Member. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm Christopher Newman, Deputy Commissioner for Administration for Streets. Actually, the biggest entry-level program we have is our sanitation collections. We hire about over 100 laborers every single year. We have about over 800 laborers, and that is probably on balance by far the biggest entry-level job title that we have. But in addition to that, we have two other types of programs that we have. One is the Future Track program, which is what the commissioner was just talking about. We have an authorized position budget of 40 future trackers that we can bring in. So I think we hired 30 throughout the course of the year. There is a drop off for future trackers, so we lose about 50% of them, either through separation or that they just decide the job isn't for them. But the good thing about Future Track is we use it for about 4 different occupational tracks. If they pass that workforce development program, and it's essentially a work-ready program where we try to bring in people from disadvantaged communities. If they pass that work-ready program, there's 4 different job titles that they can move into. One is Public Works Train A, which we use for roadway maintenance. One is engineering A trainee, which we use for surveying, entry-level surveying, as well as entry-level construction inspection support. And we also have a sweeps officer entry level, where we bring them in as field investigators and they move up into clean block officers, where they're sanitation enforcement officers. So we have those 4 paths. One of the things that we're exploring now is to move it and expand that program into skilled trades areas as well, working with the school district on their CET programs to bring people in from the school district so we can bring them in skilled trades titles at the entry level and move them up from there.
Right. And I just wanted to let me just ask a quick question here,
Sure.
because I need to ask a few more questions with the time that I have allotted in this round. And there's the bell. I will circle back with you on that point around workforce development, because I also, you mentioned CTE, which I'm very passionate about. And I want to make sure that young people who have more than 1,080 hours of service credit hours are able to utilize that experience in order to qualify for some of the promotional examinations when we do sort of interdepartment promotion opportunities. But really quickly, I just want to get these on the record for this round, and I'll circle back. You mentioned, Commissioner, the city zero waste goal in your testimony. Can you just speak to the initiatives you all have that are prioritizing waste reduction? And we know that we're continuing to see an increase in tonnage. So we get it, particularly since the pandemic. But if you could talk about what you all are continuing to do to develop your zero waste strategy to sort of meet our city goals by 2030, because that'll be a bulk of this budget for these next 5 fiscal years. And then also Delco, they hired and put out an RFP to hire a zero waste consultant to sort of conduct the next revision of their state mandated waste management plan. If you could talk about what type of zero waste master planning we're doing and who's responsible for it in the streets department, that would be helpful. And then lastly, our waste management contract should be coming up for a yearly renewal after the initial 4 years of the contract. How are you all measuring success or challenges of that contract? And how are you making decisions around the renewal, recognizing that there are so many environmental justice concerns that we have received from the different members of our Civilian Advisory Environmental Committee, and particularly around the sort of the use of the Covanta incinerator in Chester as well. We get a lot of feedback from the communities there also. So I just wanted to get that on the record. If you could just submit a response for us, that would be helpful. But we really want to know the thinking around how you are looking at that waste management contract moving forward. And lastly, recycling. Following up on where we are with recycling overall. And the additional questions I have, I will submit for the record because I did hear the bell. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. I'll let also Mike Carroll is working with this is a collective effort that we work with the Office of Transportation and Environmental Transportation and Sustainability, Infrastructure and Sustainability. But for the most part, I can tell you, council member, that our biggest focus right now has been to address the issues of illegal dumping, zero waste plan, and also to come up with a long-term plan to try to address the waste stream in terms of organic. So I'll talk a little briefly about it because I know we're limited on time. Kyle Lewis is our recycling director. She also is the chairperson of our Cleaner and Open Spaces Enforcement Committee. We've had multiple promising results in terms of a process change that we've addressed in terms of illegal dumping, working with the police department and the law department, where we issue actually notices of violations to people who come in and dump in our city and force them to pay civil restitution as opposed to being criminally locked up. And it has been effective. Over 23 people have been prosecuted on the criminal side, but 46 NOVs have been issued, and we hit a high point of a $10,000 fine of one person who was illegally dumping in North Philadelphia, advertising a clean-out business. We continue to focus on the short-term immediate needs of what zero waste is all about, which is about cleaning up our city and addressing illegal dumping. The long-term is to look at our waste stream to determine what things can be reused, reduced, and recycled and used as energy. So organics is the next big piece. And so we've been working with Office of Otis and PGW as well as the water department to come up with ways to try to pull those things out of the waste stream and put them back into productive uses such as renewable energy. And organics is one of the things that we're focusing on. We think we can get another 30% out of the waste stream if we continue to focus on that. Scott McGrath is our planning director. He is the one that works directly on these issues in terms of our zero waste goals and planning. So we will work with him in terms of future goal and for long-term planning if we need to have those discussions. I know, Mike, you jumped on as well. Did you want to add to anything that I just
think
mentioned?
you covered most of it. I would just say that the folks in sustainability are working to synthesize the work they've been involved in, including with the C40s cities along these lines. We did a workshop over, I guess it was about a year ago. We kind of wrapped that work up. We're trying to figure out how to move that forward. And a big part, like Carlton is saying, is trying to figure out how we can incorporate organics into these renewable energy conversations. But another piece of this is figuring out the roles, because it's not all going to be municipal run. If we're going to talk about zero waste, we really need to work with a lot of partners to think about their own waste streams throughout the city. And so kind of refreshing our approach to what roles different actors play is a big thing we're hoping to tee up in some documentation. So we'll try and address that in written answers to your questions.
Okay, and I'll submit everything else I have to you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Lady. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Vaughn.
Good afternoon, everyone. Council President, I promise I won't make you grab your head today by saying something out of the way. But I wanted to ask this team, who actually watches the cameras? Because I have been in situations where I have seen someone dump trash. The camera is right over their head and there's no action taking place. Is there a team watching these cameras? Because if it's not someone to catch them in real time, what is the hype all about? Having them.
Right. So we do have a dedicated team. Good morning. Good afternoon, council member. We do have a dedicated team of staff members who watch the cameras on an 8-hour interval. They're not on 24 hours a day. They work normal hours from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. normally is their average time. Any dumping that we see that occurs after those hours, which usually dumpers are likely to do that during the evening or early morning hours, the cameras are recordable, which means that we can go back the day before or several days before if it occurred on the weekends and be able to get that data to turn it over to the police department and use that as evidence to prosecute those type of cases. Deputy Commissioner Keith Warren oversees that unit. Deputy Commissioner, do you want to add anything in terms of the specifics of who the sweep officers and the dedicated team of quality control analysis that we have at that location to be able to report that data and information?
Good afternoon. I'm Keith Warren, Deputy Commissioner of Streets and Sanitation. I think you covered it pretty well, Commissioner. The cameras are monitored on an 8-hour shift. I'm going to compare it to like a swing shift. Most of the dumping occurs overnight, though, or off hours. So what we do is review the footage on the next day and pass that information on to police. There have been some daytime dumping, some blazing daytime dumping where we have caught some of those 46 individuals you talk about that we presented in OBs too. However, again, most of it is off hours. We have about 8 people dedicated, sweep officers dedicated to watching the cameras and investigating short dumps that we find on the cameras, and we have plans to expand that in the near future.
Are you expanding it to make it on the hours that the actual crimes are happening?
So the important thing to understand about short dumping and arrest itself, the police department, we don't arrest anybody. So even if we catch people in real time, we depend on the police support, which has been very good, but this city has a lot of public safety challenges, and short dumping isn't always a priority call, but we do report them, and every incident gets investigated. But real-time response to it will have to go in the order of priority that is received in the hours that we do monitor live.
And to follow up and add to that, council member, yes, we do plan to expand but we won't have someone on 24 hours. And I think that's what your concern is that when you need people on when these things are happening, as opposed to when after the fact and trying to report and go back. I think a big part of it is while we do want to expand the level of coverage, and we do have also managers. The application that we use through our Gentech system is the same application that the police department uses. So they have it's called the DIVIC. It's down in South Philadelphia, where they have a central control over all cameras, and those cameras are all wired and connected together. So we do have multiple eyes watching these issues. The challenge is that the evidence necessary when those cameras do catch people, we have to have a strict evidential procedure where they actually catch a license plate and people in action. As these cameras these dumpers sometimes get smarter and try to go in areas where the cameras may not be in a visible location to catch things like their license plate, them in the act of actually dumping. And those are the things that we need as evidence going through a criminal procedure, which is why we switched to a civil, where the rules of evidence is a little bit less stringent than it is in a criminal procedure. But to answer your question, we do have multiple eyes on it. I don't think we have 24/7 coverage on it as you're requesting.
No, I wasn't requesting the 24/7, just wondering if you have the knowledge that it's happening at night, why have your crew there, your entire crew there during the day? But we can move on from that. The other thing is, Ms. Jacobs says that the abandoned vehicle program is about to start up. I've had an abandoned vehicle on my block for a year and a half, and it's from New Jersey. We have reported it. We have asked the police to just give us the information of who the possible owner is, so we can call them and say, come get your car. But now the car is slowly being stripped and it's still, parked on the street. How soon will you be getting to these abandoned vehicles, and in what order will you be removing them from the street, or at least reporting them to the owners that may come and get these vehicles?
Okay, Director Shipman, are you on the line still?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Vaughn. Hey, Crystal. Hey. So essentially, we are working with police and SU to clear that backlog of 311 requests. And how we do that is we go out and we're given a list at the start of the day, and we identify vehicles that are actually on that list as abandoned autos. So, it could be, we would need to see where that particular vehicle is on the 311 list. One of the things that we are doing differently than has been past practice is as opposed to going with items that are on the list the longest, we're actually working from the list from more recent items and working our way backwards to try to clear, because what we found was that a lot of times vehicles that were on those older lists, when we would go out to investigate, they're no longer there. So that's part of the process. But if you can get us that 311 number, we can look into it and see what's going on.
Okay, we'll gladly do. I've sent both of you also a text message a little while ago. Did you see how that street is warping or transitioning? Is that because of water, heat? What's going on with something like that? And I'm getting a lot of calls about how it's causing damage to people's cars in that community.
I'm just looking at them now, as you mentioned it. Yes, a lot of it has to do with heat. As the temperatures rise, the asphalt softens and it begins to shift. Deputy Commissioner Montanez, you're not on it, but it has the asphalt actually over lanes and striping on this location. And it seems like bus traffic might have shifted the asphalt.
9 rides down the street.
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking at right now. Deputy Commissioner Montanez, you want to address that?
Yeah, Crystal did send me the picture. It looks to be running from the bus traffic, and during hot days and the tires being hot and heavy vehicles, they tend to rot. You do see, and that's why a lot of times what you see us is installing concrete pads at bus stops just to minimize that, and that's why you see that. But we will take a look at this and see how we can correct it but it is due to the bus traffic.
Okay. My last question, because I did hear my bell, is oftentimes, Commissioner, you know, I'm calling you about the trash and situation on Roosevelt Boulevard. I do understand that the highway or the state has the actual highway, but I think because of the renters from say 7th Street, no, not that far, say from Front Street to Rising Sun, like 2nd Street and Mansion Street, there's a lot of vacant land and a lot of dumping gets done on Mansion Street and 2nd Street. And I'm calling about it constantly. And you do come out and get the bulk stuff, but for the trash that may need a broom or something to be picked up is always left. And I don't know if that encourages people to continue to dump there, but it never ever looks clean. And 2nd Street from say Hunting Park coming back to Rising Sun, you know how that street picks up at Rising Sun and goes down 2nd Street to say Erie Avenue, but it is always dirty. It's a cemetery there, and it's not per se commercial because there's a couple businesses there, but they're not businesses that people will go in and shop. It's more so trucks parking back there and things like that. There's always a lot of dumping back there. So how do we address that? I mean, there's no signs there. There's no cameras there. How can I try to help you make that situation better?
So thank you, council member. One of the things that we are working on is to expand our mechanical street sweeping program this year to a citywide cleaning program where we address primary and secondary corridors, similar to areas that you just described. So they won't get weekly, but they will get periodic mechanical street sweeping on a routine basis based on the need in the area. So they may get monthly or every other month. But if we get complaints, we'll come in, at least it doesn't accumulate as you're stating earlier. So when we get the trash and the amount of heavy debris and equipment, if there's still that loose litter effect that's still there where they're all along curb lines and tree lines, we'll send crews in and they'll periodically be able to mechanically clean in those areas. So we know that's a challenge, and that's one of the initiatives that we're starting this year under Keep It Clean Philly, so that we can touch at least every neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia. That is a big part of one of the challenges that we face. So we'll make sure we focus on 2nd Street around Masher, Rising Sun, and Huntington Park to be able to roll that part of the program out as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Harity.
Thank you, Council President. Commissioner, good morning, good afternoon. Listen, I'd like to echo my colleagues and first start by thanking you and your staff. I actually live in the Kensington area. I live at G and Allegheny. So I see firsthand the hard work of your employees and how they're fighting a losing battle there. I've seen you and Clip come out and clean up the little street right off and next to Esperanza in the morning, and I come out on my way home at night and the thing's trashed again already. As Councilwoman Lozada said, it's mostly done by our homeless, addicted population we have out there. That's another issue. I only have really two questions for you, fairly simple. One is, what's the total number of staff for the streets department, and what is the total number that you are actually short? And the second question would be, when was the last time your department had a cost of living increase for our employees? Not the 1-2% that they give every 1 or 2 years. I'm talking a real cost of living increase.
Thank you, Council Member. Chris Newman, Deputy Commissioner, can give you our number of employees versus the number of vacancies that we currently have. He has that number ready for you right now.
Good afternoon, Council Member. So we have 2,378 authorized positions. 271 of them are currently vacant. We have just over 2,100 positions filled right now.
Okay, so that's not too bad numbers, about 10% or so, 15%. You're down.
We're at 85%, roughly speaking. Now we have on our
50%.
sanitation side, we're about 92% staffed. It's the transportation side that we're really struggling. We're about 75% staffed there. Most of that is because most of the positions that we got authorized this year are on the transportation side, but we are faced with some attrition on that side as well. So that's the side where we're struggling the most at this point.
Okay.
And the second question regarding the cost of living increases, as you know, most of our employees are union represented, and those are coming through a contract that's negotiated through those type of contracts. So we really don't have authorization and control over what's negotiated through that contract. But Chris, if you want to comment on that as well, feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said, Commissioner, is correct. We're sort of stuck with whatever the collective bargaining agreement says in terms of wage increases. So year to year, recently they've gotten 3.25%, and they've gotten that each year over the last several years. That's really all I can say there. There's, you could argue that some of our positions are probably not paid enough. Yeah, I think you could definitely argue that. Like, for example, our laborers, our sanitation collections folks, I think that they do a lot of work and they probably should get paid more. But in terms of year to year,
What's the average salary for one of those laborers? I'm sorry.
They come in at the entry level rate is $37,000, and I think that goes up to about $40,000. We have a lot of new laborers, so if you take a look at our data, it's about the average that they make is $38,000 base salary, and then they get some overtime on top of that. But base salary, it's about $38,000 that they're making right now, most of them.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm actually a union laborer, and compared to us, that's peanuts. I just think it's, and I guess we'll address that when their new contract comes up. But for me, it's just unbelievable that we mandate that they live in the city and we don't pay them enough to actually live here. That's the only questions I had. Thank you again, and thank you for everything you're doing. Like I said, my neighborhood, I see it every day. You guys out there trying to hustle to keep up with it. And just to let you know, in that area now, you have 3 council people. So we are here. We are all concerned about that. Me, Ketsy, and Sharon Vaughn, we are working together. So please, if you have any ideas of how we can get a handle on this, please feel free to let us know. We're very interested.
Thank you, council member. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas.
Good afternoon, Council President. Good afternoon, colleagues. First and foremost, as the chair of the Streets and Services Department, I have to join the rest of my colleagues in just thanking the commissioner and his entire team for all the work that you do. I'm not going to start naming names because I'm going to get in trouble. I'm definitely going to miss somebody, but the list is long, and we appreciate partnering with you on a number of different initiatives as it relates to the work that's done. I do have a couple clarifying questions. I've been listening to the testimony today, and there was a couple of things I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, because I'm talking to constituents all the time, and there's always a lot of questions, and I like to communicate facts. So first and foremost, we talk a lot about the illegal dumping and how many tons we actually pick up as a city. How do we have an estimate on how many tons of illegal, just how many tons are out there as it relates to illegal dumping? Like how, because we're not picking everything up clearly, right? So do we have an estimate of how much dumping takes place annually in the city of Philadelphia, or is that not something we know right now?
Yeah, that's something that varies. It's hard to calculate. It's based on the requests that we get in, and we calculate the tonnage that we collect from each site. We can give you an average of what we collect each year, and I can get that number for you of what we collected over the last.
You said it earlier. I don't have it written down in front of me. I don't want to act like, it just the question. It just said, well, we know how much we pick up. I wonder how much is there
actually out there.
Actually not picking up. Okay, no, you're fine. You again, just sticking with some of the things I heard earlier. You talked about 97% on-time trash pickup rate. I think for when we looked at the past, it's been around 80 to 85%. Is that correct? So does that mean that going up from around 85% up to 97%. Is that accurate based on what you said?
Absolutely correct. Yes. And
So
that was 85% was before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we was about 30 or 40%. So
where's the commercial? Where's the where's the press conference? Right. And I'm joking, but it's somewhat serious. I think at the end of the day, a part of what we struggle with as a city is narrative and optics. That's a big problem. And misinformation and misconceptions are a real thing. And there has to be a victory lap for that. Not just for you, right? Not just for the mayor or for council, but for the people who are actually doing the work. Because at the end of the day, just like we get these complaints, they do too. They see the signs. Council president said people running TV ads. They watch TV. They have digital. They're seeing these things. And there's little things like this that continues to boost the morale and the spirit as it relates to city workers. So I'm somewhat joking, but I do think we should have somewhat of a streets team conversation about what we could do to kind of praise folks, because those numbers are significant and they really matter. So thank you for that information.
Thank you, sir.
I got to talk a little bit about illegal dumping. And, I introduced this Citizens Watchdog bill. And a big part of the premise behind that bill was the fact that we have close to how many cameras do we have across the city of Philadelphia that's monitoring illegal dumping? You said the number earlier.
Yeah, right now, our department has over 212 installed. We're buying another 150, but that does not include the hundreds of cameras that we use with the police department that overlap illegal dumping sites. So a lot of the criminal activity that occurs also is where illegal dumping occurs as well, and we use them. So in total, we have over 500 cameras dedicated to illegal dumping. That's both through the police department and our department, with another 150 coming.
I'll say two things to that. I mean, the first thing is that's a good start. But at the end of the day, it's not working, right? So I introduced the Citizens Watchdog bill as legislation and try to activate constituents to use their phones to be a part of that monitoring process and give 10% of what we actually collect on illegal dumping to the actual constituents. So if you catch somebody illegal dumping, record it on your phone, report it to the city of Philadelphia, that person gets $5,000 fine. $500 of that $5,000 fine goes to the constituent that actually communicates it. There's a model like that already in New York that I actually didn't know about until after I introduced the legislation. So we've been talking to legislators up there to see what does it look like to replicate it. Because at the end of the day, we went over to Camden, and when we went over there, one of the things that we found was while Camden might be the side of maybe one councilmatic district as it relates to the city of Philadelphia, the amount of cameras that they have and the coordinated effort that they have is actually more than what we have in Philadelphia. At any time, 80% of their city is under surveillance. And so I think for us, what I'm trying to do is work with you and the administration to put us in a position to be able to be a little more innovative, because I don't know if we have the ability to put 80% of the city of Philadelphia under surveillance. That would cost a pretty penny, and we might run into other issues as well, too. But what we can do is we can activate constituents to be a little more diligent as it relates to what's going on in their neighborhoods. Not saying it's constituents' responsibility, but I don't think there's anything wrong with incentivizing constituents to be a part of this process as it relates to catching illegal dumpers. I'm wondering, what's your thoughts as it relates to that legislation and what I just talked about? And do you think that this is a path that we could possibly navigate moving forward?
We are definitely open to whatever we can do to try to address it and getting citizens engaged in that process, whether through incentives or anything else that we can do. That's certainly helpful to our department, and certainly is something that we would support. And if we can monetarily, I think the challenge is that when that money, we have to make sure that when that money is collected, if it's collected, that it gets into the hands of the people that helped us address it. And so we need a strong process in place. I think Deputy Managing Director Mike Carroll and I was talking about this type of incentive that you introduced. We certainly do support it 100%. We just need to make sure that we got a strong process to be able to collect those revenues and to be able to redistribute them to the citizen that did the work. Otherwise, it affects the credibility of the program, and the citizens won't participate if this. I reported it and really nothing happened. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. So I want to make sure that those systems are in place.
Mr. Carroll, thank you and your team. I really appreciate the work that you do. It's been a pleasure working with you as well, too. I would love to hear your perspective of what was just discussed, as well as someone help me understand, and this will be my last question for this round after listening to Mr. Carroll. Somebody can help me understand how many illegal dumpers did we actually catch last year, so we can have some context as to, how we're doing currently and maybe what we anticipate the legislation may be able to do if implemented. So thank you for your time, Council President, and thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, and I'll just say I think that's a great idea, and it's certainly something we want to reach out to you and work with your office around. That structure is really important, and making sure we have something that we can scale up. And you may be familiar, folks all may be familiar, that in certain instances we can offer rewards for, helping to solve crimes. That is a model, but I think what you're talking about might be more effective because it's a little bit more built into the structure. So really interested to see what you've learned and figure out what we can incorporate into our own work.
Thank you. And Council President, just wanted to know, just again, as it relates to the legislation we're trying to move forward, how many illegal dumpers did we catch last year? Since we've implemented cameras and done some things different, how many folks have we actually caught? And what percentage of the folks that we caught have been because of a camera?
I believe that, and Kyle, our recycling director who sits on and chairs the Open Space and Enforcement Committee, works closely with the police department, and she has those numbers. Kyle, real quickly, could you jump on for the council member and give the number of cases that we actually prosecuted last year? Is Kyle on?
Commissioner, if you
I'll give you the 23 cases last year and 46 NOVs that we actually implemented. So no, this is a violation through that new process. I didn't see Kyle pop on, but I'll get you those numbers. 23, yes.
Yeah, we got to do something. We
got to do 23.
All right, hey, Council President, I'm not going to come back for another round, but Commissioner, please figure out a way we can do a victory lap about the work that's being done around trash. Something has to be done. At the end of the day, I listened to you talk about the vacancies in your department as well too. And throughout the course of these budget hearings, we're constantly hearing that 1 in 5 jobs in the city of Philadelphia are currently vacant. So when people are doing good, we can't always offer a financial incentive, but we can do other things to just make sure people know that we appreciate them. We beat them up when they do wrong. We should praise them when they do good. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Member. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman. I concur 1,000%. And we should be able to figure something out and give our people some props for the good work that they do, in spite of some of the challenges that they had. If we could do Councilwoman Bass and Johnson, I think for the second round, then take a break. I think the stenographer is going to need a break. So Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass, and then I think Councilman Johnson, you're the only one on the second round. We'll take a break after that.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you. And good afternoon. Commissioner, how are you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon.
Good. Commissioner, we talk every day. It seems like Absolutely. Every day. And I want to join the chorus of my colleagues in saying thank you so much for all that you do, you and your entire department. I don't want to start naming names because I'm going to forget people, but y'all are just phenomenal. Much respect for the work that you do. And although, listen, there's a lot to be done in the city, particularly around trash and quality of life and those kinds of things. I know that when we call, you show up, and you don't just show up just because we call. You are proactive, but you can't be everywhere all at once. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for all that you are doing for our city. I did just have a couple of questions. Many of my questions have already been answered. And that's what happens when you're towards the end. But just a couple of questions I wanted to ask you about. What was the recycling program with the city of Philadelphia? At one time, we had a very robust, it's still a robust program, but at one time we had, incentives that we did and all kinds of, things that encourage people to recycle. Can you talk about what is the recycle rate? Has that slipped since the pandemic? Are we on point? I also remember the cost of recycling change, which dramatically changed. the incentivization, if that's a word, to recycle. So can you talk about that whole thing for me, please?
Sure. At one point in time, we were making $6 million a year for recycling, and now we're paying close to $8 million a year. So I just give you the economics of it, and that's because of the changes, not only what's being accepted in our overseas markets, but the lack of available markets here in the city of Philadelphia and across the United States to accept that type of material. In many cases, it's easier and cheaper for companies and industries to build new as opposed to recycle products, and therefore you have a cost because you're no longer making money off of selling the materials. You're now having to warehouse it and actually figure out what you're going to do with it in processing. And so that's why you're seeing the major shift. Here in the city of Philadelphia, the streets department is 1,000% committed to continuing recycling. We've undergone some significant challenges over the years, especially during the pandemic, and in many cases, we had to mix recycling just to get it off the streets for health and safety reasons, but we are no longer mixing that into the trash. We're processing it, and we're always constantly looking at ways on how we can improve the system. We drastically fell, even before the pandemic, the recycling tonnage was beginning to change, the recycling stream. Many people aren't using as much paper because of the electronic and digital world anymore. The cardboard market is still strong. However, plastics, people are relying less on single-use plastics and other forms of plastic, which is a good thing, but it's also affecting the rate and amount of material that we have in the stream. They're using lighter packaging, for example. They're not using heavier plastics. They're using different types of materials. So our recycling stream is evolving constantly. And so we may not get to 20%. We may be at 15%, but what's actually out there. But we can do better. And one of the things that we can do is definitely try to increase participation, let people know its value and its importance, and still dedicate to giving resources such as recycling bins and information out so that people understand what to recycle and how to recycle. Contamination is the biggest factor affecting the waste stream today. So we're paying a premium when material comes in and a contaminated rate. That means if food waste is still in jars, that means it just basically things that we don't accept, like, we find things like bowling balls or toys in the recycling stream. Those things that we don't process in recyclable material, we have to do something and discard it. We have to pay a premium for that. So those are some of the challenges that we're now facing with recycling and in the industry as a whole. It's evolving, it's changing, and we need to keep up with the times. How do we get back to it? We need to create domestic markets here in the United States so that we don't rely on overseas markets. We need to continue to figure ways on how to reduce and reuse and recycle, and ultimately talk about organics and try to use it as renewable energy. So I think that's the direction that we need to go to in terms of supporting our environment.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think at one point we were having a lot of conversation in the city around composting? And I know that there's Bennett Compost, there's other, I'm sure, composting sites. Does that help you to remove items from the trash, or am I better just sticking a lot of that stuff down my garbage disposal, or like how what kind of things can we do now that will help you?
Yeah, in terms of basic citizen responses, some easy to do things. You talked about a garbage disposal. Our waste stream is about 30% organics, and a lot of that is food waste. And so anytime that we can take that out of the waste stream, that helps us get towards a goal of zero waste in the city of Philadelphia. You talked about other ways in terms of renewable or reusable items, renewable energy, things that is in the waste stream that we now can create like gas or electricity off of. Those are the things that we need to set up systems for in the city of Philadelphia. And Deputy Manager and Director Mike Carroll and myself have been working with a conglomerate of people within city government to figure out the city has a waste stream for that, and where can we put it? Where can we build a place where we have a digester to take those things out of the waste stream and turn it back into the energy? Those are the conversations that we need to have in terms of a long-term plan for where zero waste evolves. And I see Mike popped on, so you might want to add to it as well, real quickly.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, how are you, Councilmember?
Good.
Mike
How are
Carroll.
you?
Again, thank you. Deputy Managing Director for Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability. Yeah, Commissioner Williams is right. I think the long-term picture is pretty promising. I have to take my hat off to PGW and some of their leadership around this. Folks may be aware that the city of Philadelphia also, while we're talking long term, is competing to be one of the, I think, 8 to 10 hydrogen hubs around the city. And there may be some good crossover in the long term between us figuring out how to manage our organic waste stream and some of the investments and infrastructure that may be involved in that as well, interestingly. Because if we do manage to do some of this diversion of organic material, into the energy creation market, those investments, I think, tie over well with how we will also be at the same time looking to kind of decarbonize to some extent our waste, energy processing at the same time. So renewable natural gas seems like a good bridge to these greener forms of hydrogen that the city of Philadelphia, this region, is particularly well suited for. And so that strategy can help us identify investment grants and things like that to promote those activities over the long term.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I just want to go back to the recycling, because I recycle. I put out, and I don't know if this is normal, Mr. Commissioner, but I put out more recycling than I put out trash. And I sort it, and but it just amazes me about that the number of people who still, for example, will put a plastic bag in a recycle bin and not, just really not sure what to do. So I don't know what kind of things you have to address that. The only other thing I just wanted to do is really encourage you to continue to find a way to deal with recycling here in the city of Philadelphia. And I know you said we went from making money to basically spending, making nice money to spending a lot of money. And so how we're going to deal with recycling is critically important. And I would really hope that anybody listening will think about this past weekend when we had tornadoes, in the region, and when we had hail and rain at the same time. And, this is not just happening just because. This is global warming. It's happening, and we all have to dramatically change what we do and how we do it. So, even when I go, I like to go to a particular place in Maryland, once in a while for a quick getaway. And when I do, they don't recycle there, and it drives me nuts. And so I end up carrying my recycling back home every single time so that I can recycle materials. And these are the kind of things that we really have to do. Go to make sure that we recycle and that we take it very seriously, because we only have one planet. But I would just want to encourage you, Mr. Commissioner, to try to find a way to deal with this.
Thank you, Council Member. And real quickly, we do have a campaign called Recycle Right that's going on that targets in specific neighborhoods where we have low participation rates to educate people on the things that you just mentioned at its basic core, so that people can understand what to recycle, how to recycle, and how often and when to recycle, and where to get resources. So we'll continue to work with, communities. We'll have community meetings. We'll actually go out door to door and hand out information through our sweep unit. And we'll speak to people about the importance of continuing to focus on recycling as a part of our climate control message for the city of Philadelphia. We all need to do our part, and people can if they just recycle, that's a part of it. And so while we pay a premium, it's still important for our environment for the future.
Absolutely.
If I may, I just want to mention for everybody, just remember 215. Those are the plastics you can recycle in Philadelphia. So that should be easy for folks.
215, got it. Easy breezy. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
There's also a
Thank you,
television
Commissioner.
ad with that Recycle Right program, a television campaign.
Thank you.
What was that again?
Deputy Williams.
This is Deputy Commissioner Keith Warren. There's a television ad on cable stations with that Recycle Right program. You should be seeing it on a lot of cable stations.
That's great.
Very good. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson for round two.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I'll be brief. I know we'll be wrapping up soon. I want to also give a shout out to Tom Conway and the CLIP team. as well as I was told Farouk Scott, and also Lisa Banks, different individuals who are interacting with my staff on a day-to-day basis, trying to address the issue of sanitation and a cleanly environment in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you, Carlton, for your leadership in leading those individuals. I have a question around, I want to go back to Future Track. How many young people are you budgeting for this upcoming cycle? I'm advocating for an increase in this particular budget because I see Future Track, and I've always seen Future Track as a part of our violence prevention strategies here in the city of Philadelphia. I think about, in the spirit of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and how under his New Deal plan, he used government to marshal individuals, marshal resources to address a particular type of issue. And I've always seen Future Track as a key to us getting young people involved in things that are positive as opposed to things that are negative. And so how many young people are you budgeting in this budget cycle? The cost, I'm going to be advocating under my Save Our Youth initiative to increase this number, and hopefully we can use it as a part of our violence prevention strategy. But also, Christopher, you talked about something very critically important, that the individuals who do apply, not all of them finish. Some people leave for a variety of different reasons, and maybe you can touch on that, and are we doing data analysis to kind of figure out how do we hopefully keep people encouraged to continue moving forward? And can we move beyond $15 an hour for this program and maybe something like $18 to $20 an hour for this program? And I'll wrap up on that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Council Member, for the questions. So we have 40 positions that are authorized and we're requesting for our FY24 budget right now for Future Track. It's a carryover from this fiscal year. We had 40 positions also authorized this fiscal year. I think if you look at the information that we're getting in terms of why people are leaving, it's partly due that we're paying them $15 an hour and they can make more doing something else. So when something else pops up that is a little bit more in compensation, they're leaving us. And we have about a 50% rate of people leaving the program. So now the good thing is once the ones that stay, then they have really good job prospects in terms of different occupational tracks that they go into. But we, at least for this year, we
lost the last part of your conversation, Chris.
I'm sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Now we can, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where did I leave off?
I think I caught you saying the number that you budgeted for this coming budget cycle, FY24, correct?
Yeah. FY24 is 40 positions, yes.
40 positions. And I wanted to know, in terms of this process, and who will be responsible for raising that rate on the city side? Who will be responsible for going from 15 to 18 to 20? Who would be responsible for doing that budget-wise?
Well, see, these are not civil service positions, so I think we could just request it from OHR, and I think that they would approve it. The only question would be, could we afford that from a budgetary perspective?
So I want to put this request out here from a budgetary perspective, Christopher and Carlton. Mm-hmm. Can you look at a scenario between $18 and $20 an hour, right, for 100 individuals? Just a number that we would like to review. I would like to review. I know this administration is serious about addressing the issue of violence here in the city of Philadelphia. I know our mayor is an issue that's very near and dear to our mayor. And we have close to maybe a $5 billion budget just in general. And so I think it's something worthy that we should take a hard look at, because one, we're the #1 big city when it comes to poverty, and we're making some strides, but obviously we have a longer way to go. But when it comes to the issue of crime and violence, the best way to keep our young people occupied is by giving them a job, right? And I know for a fact I've met other young men who participated in this program, right, and got city jobs that are doing very well for themselves right now. And so this could be a pathway out of a life of poverty for a lot of our young men and young ladies who would like to participate. But I always thought this program was special. And so I want to push and see how do we advocate for increasing how much these young people get paid beyond $15 an hour, and increasing the number of individuals from 40 to 100 as part of our overall City of Philadelphia violence prevention strategy to save our youth.
Yes, that's absolutely something that we can work with you and the administration with to see if we can address that funding gap.
Is somewhere like, what are you talking about? Like, are you?
we certainly can look at it, Councilmember.
And Council CP, no different than Council President doing on the PHS program to save our young people. Giving them same day pay is very effective. It gives young people an opportunity to get involved in something that's positive. And what I would say, when you go to these graduations, right, and you hear these young people's stories about how they were totally going on the wrong path, but now they have an opportunity to put a few dollars in their pocket. Some mentorship while they're actually doing something positive, right?
Yep.
Actually save their lives. And so there is no other pressing issue that I believe in the city of Philadelphia that we have to address than to keep our young people safe. And so I will be following up with you and your team, and I was obviously conferring with the council president to see how we can make bold investments in our young people and making sure the things that we're doing are transformative when it comes to saving the lives of our young people. Thank you very much, Council President. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication, as well as Chris.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Folks, what we'd like to do is take a break, and we will come back because I know license inspection will be long. I anticipate a significant number of questions. So we'll just take a break until 2, and we'll come back with license inspection, prisons, and fleet management for the afternoon session. Commissioner and your team, thank you all so much for your testimony. As always, please be prepared to respond to callbacks. We may have some things we'd like to ask you all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council President. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your work. We appreciate it. Council will stay in recess until 2 o'clock this afternoon.